This episode is sponsored by Aura Frames. What people really want for the holidays is to see their loved ones more often, and that's why the best gift you can give is an Aura digital picture frame. They're perfect to share your life with the people you love. You can share unlimited photos and videos from anywhere in the world, all through the smart and easy-to-use Aura app, or you can preload your frame to make it a special gift right out of the box. Get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver Mat frames by going to auraframes.com and using code CommandZone at checkout. That's AURAFrames.com, promo code CommandZone.
Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Weeks, and today I am joined by two wonderful members of our staff. We've got Jordan Pridgen.
Hi, I'm Jordan Pridgen.
And Josh Murphy.
Hi, I'm Murph. Not Jordan Pridgen.
What?
Crazy, I know.
Can you believe it? 2024 is coming to a close, which means it is time to look back and see how it went. Today, specifically, we were talking about all of the Precons that came out in 2024, and I enlisted the two members of our team who did the most Precon upgrades this year to talk about them. We're going to go through, we're going to give them rankings, we're going to determine what our favorites of the year were and which ones missed the mark everywhere from Murders at Karlov Manor, remember that, to the most recent set with Precons, of course, Duskmourn. But before we get into any of that, if you want to pick up any of these precons or any of the singles that we talk about in this episode, go to cardkingdom.com/command. Card Kingdom has a huge selection of singles, sealed product. If you're building one of these decks, you want to build flavorfully, so you want exactly the printing of exactly the card in the condition that you want. And you can shop and get as many of those as possible in one location and get them shipped to you safely in one envelope. We're Commander players, we're Magic players, so we're picky about the cards that we get. And I like to shop from a place that knows Magic cards and knows how to get me exactly the ones that I'm looking for. If you're paying for that fancy foil, you want to get that fancy foil. Plus, when you're shopping there, you get to support the show while you do so. So go to cardkingdom.com/command when you're shopping for Magic cards.
And if you want to protect those fancy foils, you can go to ultrapro.com/command. Use UltraPro products. They have sleeves, playmats, deck boxes, anything that you could ever want or need in order to protect your game pieces. Also make them look really darn cool. If you like any of these precons and you're like, hey, I forgot about that precon. I forgot that this came out this year. I want to go build it. Well, you can get the UltraPro product to go with it. So you can have the sleeves of the Face Commander to go with it. You can have the deck box of the Face Commander to go with it. And if you go to ultrapro.com/command, they have flash sales on there all the time. So you can buy all sorts of stuff for heavily discounted prices. You can get some pretty sweet stuffs for not a lot of money and good quality products while you're at it. So again, ultrapro.com/command.
Absolutely. And it's the holidays. So if you're getting gifts for your fellow gamers, pick up some sleeves, some deck boxes. Make sure all their stuff looks great for the holidays. Speaking of the holidays, if you want to support the show directly, go to patreon.com/commandzone. I just found out that you can gift Patreon memberships to people.
Wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
It's pretty sweet. So if you have a friend that you know wants to support the show, they're a big fan of the Command Zone, but they don't have the money or the wherewithal to support the show financially, you can give them all of the perks of being a patron by giving them a gifted membership. We'll include a special link below just so you know how to do that. But those perks are you get access to game nights and extra turns a day early without ads. You get access to exclusive content like Turn Talk.
I could gift all my friends Patreon so they can watch how clever I am on Turn Talk.
Absolutely. They're like, Jordan, you're so fun when you're talking about all your decks.
I am.
It's a very cool way to support the show and to give them something that isn't, you know they have all the Magic cards they want. So here's a Magic-themed gift that they didn't even think was possible. Speaking of Patreon, we shout out one lucky patron every single podcast episode. And this one is dedicated to Michael Gomez. Michael, you rock.
You rock.
Thanks, Michael.
Pretty cool.
Let's get into it. We've got a lot of precons to go through today. I want to do a little bit of context, a little bit of overarching year stats before we get into the nitty gritty. There were 24 precons released in 2024.
Holy cow.
9 of them were 2-color decks. 14 of them were 3-color decks. and one was 5-color.
No monocolor?
No monocolor, no 4-color. They're clearly trending toward 3-color. I think that's sort of the preferred commander grouping.
It's pretty popular.
The most popular color groupings of the year, there were two color groupings that were printed 3 times this year, and they were Jeskai and Naya. So white, red, blue, and white, red, green were printed 3 times.
Good year for Boros.
Red, white.
It was a big Boros year,
Yeah,
for sure.
Rachel must be excited.
I'll take it, even with a dash of other colors in it.
Everything's coming up Boros.
We're going to be grading each precon that we talk about today based on its playability, its reprint value, its new card impact, and its cool factor. So playability is how good it is out of the box. What does it feel like when you're playing it? The reprint value is how much money are you getting for your money spent? And the new card impact is considering the new cards that were designed for that set. How much play do they see? So we're using some EDH rec numbers to measure that. Obviously, a little bit is not a perfect measurement, but gives you a general idea of what people are excited about. And then finally, we're talking about the cool factor. This is just, is it interesting and different? Does it spark ingenuity?
Does it spark joy?
Joy.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about a lot of financial stats today. We're not going to be talking about overall reprint value because prices of precons have fluctuated so much over the year. Everything from like $40 off the shelf to $65 off the shelf, and sometimes higher than that depending on certain precons. So we're not going to be talking about the overall reprint value. Instead, we're going to be using 2 statistics to talk about them today. We're talking about your bang for your buck value, which is the total reprint value divided by the approximate pre-order price. So that gives you an idea of like how much you're getting for how much you're spending. And that's an easy way to measure things that have different pre-order prices. We're also going to talk about the average price per reprinted card. So that is the reprint value divided by the number of reprints. That gives you, like, if you were going to grab a random reprint out of the box, what is it most likely to cost? So this gives you an idea of like the quality of reprints and helps you compare stuff like the Universes Beyond stuff that have fewer reprints to decks that have more reprints in the deck, usually like 70 or
Makes
something
sense.
like that.
And these numbers are from when they came out, right?
Yes. All of these statistics are taken from the time that they were released. So we're all comparing them to each other at time of release. So to get into it, I want to talk about the average numbers real quick. So you have a little bit of context for some of the numbers that we're giving you once we get into the episode. The average bang for your buck value of all of the precons in 2024 was $2.75. For reference, last year was $2.60, so we're very similar to that.
A little higher.
A little higher. We're sneaking up.
Oh, yeah.
And then this year, the average price per reprinted card of 2024 was $2.02, which is approximately the same as last year, which was $2.07. So about $2 for reprints is the bar we're trying to clear for it to be considered a good reprint value.
Makes sense.
Interesting.
Okay, it's time.
Let's do it.
Let's get into it. Starting
Bring
with
time.
the very first set of the year, Murders at
Markov. Wait,
Somebody's Manor.
Not Markov.
Murders at a Manor.
Jordan, did you think about it for like half a second? Say, oh, it was Markov, and then just went full on it was Markov?
I just decided to go for it.
Okay.
The first commander deck that we're talking about from Murders at Karlov Manor is Blame Game. This is the one with the face commander Nelly Borka, Impulsive Accuser. She's 2, a red and a white for a 2/4 human detective with vigilance. Whenever Nelly Borka attacks, suspect target creature. Do we remember suspect? No. Then goad all suspected creatures. Whenever one or more creatures an opponent controls deals combat damage to one or more of your opponents, you and the controller of those creatures each draw a card. All right, so that's Nelly. That's the face commander. She is currently ranked 480 among commanders on EDH Rec. I thought that was a fun stat to include this year. It's a new thing, so you can tell sort of how many people are building it.
Just like, how popular is it?
How popular is this commander? Yeah,
Does it resonate with people?
At least like how many decks are being put online is what we can learn from EDH Rec.
Which is always higher for face commanders than like normal stuff.
Right.
But
because a lot of people will upload their precon deck and then either not change it or change it very minimally.
But if they really want to break into the top tier, it's got to inspire people.
That's true. This is a Boros deck. It's red and white. It was a combat control deck with a bit of like goad and politics. And if you attack, then I'll give you something. The bang for your buck value for this deck was $3.41. So that is above average by quite a bit, actually. And the average price per reprint was $2.16. So a hair above average as well. The backup commander for this deck is Feather, Radiant Arbiter. We don't know what she does. Nobody cares.
Nope.
She was weird and bad.
Yeah, I call her Bad Feather.
Definitely worse than the normal Feather, but I don't think they wanted to print one that was better than the already existing Feather.
The Feather you forgot about. It took me forever to figure out what the backup commander of this deck was. The most valuable reprint in this deck is Fiendish Duo at $35. This was the best reprint of the year. It was tied for the best. There's two worth for $35. And the most played new card is Trouble in Pairs with 58,088 decks on EDH Rec. That is a lot. That's a lot of decks. I don't have averages for that because it scales sort of weird as the year goes on, but like that is the highest on our sheets today.
Yeah. And it also had controversy around it, which was kind of fun, right?
It did. We love a little controversy.
A little bit of plagiarism going on.
This one also had Prisoner's Dilemma, which is a very cool new card as well. So now that we remember what Blame Game is, Murph, I'm going to have you start us out. What did you think about this one?
I thought it was pretty darn good, right? Like, I think that's this deck like actually made the goad mechanic and everything, all that, hey, you should all attack each other thing. I think it worked well and a lot better than a lot of other precon decks like this have in the past. It doesn't have a ton of punching power in the late game because it does have that problem of, well, I have a ton of stuff that goats things. It's 1v1. Well, shoot. Now what? So it had like one or two cards that helped with that, but that's still like an overarching problem with this strategy that this deck didn't fully solve. But yeah, the commander was great. I do have one issue with it though, and it's that the commander is called Impulsive Accuser, and it just draws cards and doesn't impulsively draw cards. What is with that? What the heck? Come on, flavor/design team.
What grade did you give this one?
I gave this one a B.
All right.
Very solid.
I'll throw it to you, Jordan. What did you think of this deck?
So I upgraded this one, and I remember I jumped on the upgrade right away because I love like politics decks like this, especially ones that like get everybody yelling at each other.
Yeah, you have a Brina deck, right?
Yeah, I have a Brina deck, and I saw this, I'm like, it's Boros Brina.
It really is.
And one thing I have to say is if I went back and watched my upgrade video for this, and I was a little, I think, too harsh at how it would play out of the box.
We were a little, we were strict with this one.
Yeah, but I have to admit, like, I played not with it, but against it at an LGS, just straight out of the box, and was very impressed at, like, how well it did exactly what it's supposed to do. Like, got everyone talking about it and get other people angry at each other because they're, you know, choosing to attack each other with the goaded things. Did a ton of card advantage. And I don't know, I was very impressed with how this deck, like, turned out. This was definitely, like, I know it's like one of the first ones we're talking about, but it was one of my favorites of the year. And yep, I gave this one an A.
Sweet.
Understandable.
I agree. I remember thinking about this one and being frustrated with how it was built because it doesn't look like your typical Boros deck. And I thought it did have sort of some weird side quests going on with like Feather, and some of the aura stuff was a little bizarre. But the deck is really fun and it's full of cards that we play now. And if I'm talking about a deck that is fun to play, has a cool different face commander, produced a lot of cool reprinted cards, I was a little too heavy on this one being a little bit clunky out of the box.
And the problem was it had a lot in its theme that made it seem like it was kind of threatening people instead of encouraging them to attack each other.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's not how I, you know, would build it going full on, but
yeah,
it just plays well.
Yeah, it seems to work like pretty well, like you said. One thing about like the Fiendish Duo, it's kind of interesting because like that card specifically, yes, it was very expensive, but that's because it came from, I believe it was Magic Game Night 2019.
Right, there was one printing of it.
There was one printing of it, and it was
very
low. So now the card is worth a lot less. So I'm glad that it's there in the world and people can play it. But I don't know if it's like, wow, this was a crazy reprint. It's more of
that's fair.
I'm glad they did it.
I think they more than made up for it in the new cards,
which were awesome.
The new cards were very fun.
This deck came with. I gave this one an A. I really did think it was unique and thoughtful, which means that our overall grade for the blame game is an A. We round up. Sorry, Murph.
That's okay. This is a fun deck. I can't be mad that, wow, this fun deck is fun. Crazy.
Hated it.
Everyone in the comments roast Murph for being so wrong about playing game.
They will.
I rated it above average. B is above average. C is average.
All right, up next, Deadly Disguise. This is the one with the face commander Kaust, Eyes of the Glade. It is it's either hybrid Boros and a green, so 2 mana for a 2/2 Dryad Detective. Whenever a creature you control that was turned face up this turn deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Tap, turn target face down, attacking creature you control face up. That's Kaust. He is number 794 ranked commander on EDH Rec, which I will say is extremely low.
That is not high.
Yeah.
It's very low.
Honestly, that's still higher than I expected from this guy.
This was not a well-received commander. The deck as a whole was Naya. It was a white, red, and green. It was a face-down creatures deck, focusing on disguise in particular. Its bang for your buck value was $3.25. All right, a little like above average, not as high as a blame game. And its average price per reprint was $1.95. Again, oh no, this one's under average. So this is below average reprints for this deck.
Which I will say is surprising, because looking at them now, it has some of the reprints that have held value the best.
Yeah, it's just a hair under reprint quality, but it's still like on the line for like medium to good, I would say, in terms of reprint value. The backup commander for this deck is Duskana, the Rage Mother. This is the one that cares about 2/2s, is cute as a bear with 2 wee bears. Its most valuable reprint was Jessica's Will, which at the time was $28. And the most played new card in the deck is Unexplained Absence, which is a very cool removal spell that I actually like a lot, but it's only played in 508 decks on EDH Rec at time of recording. So that's Kaust. Jordan, why don't you tell us what you thought about this deck?
I thought this deck was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, actually, I had sort of almost like a philosophical problem with this deck, which is every commander deck doesn't need to be a beginner product necessarily, but I feel like this one is almost a trap, because when you get this one, you're like, oh, all these face down things. I can't wait to go and upgrade my deck with all those face down creatures out there that'll slot right into this.
Nope.
But if you went and got this deck and then looked into Magic to find it, there just weren't the pieces you wanted to make it a good functioning, like, high-end deck.
The pieces are in the deck.
Yeah.
Like the good morphs and all the face down stuff are in the deck.
And there's like a couple other things.
Which I'm glad they put them in, to be fair.
But it just like isn't there. And okay, it feels like the Jessica's Will thing should like bring it up in people's estimation.
But Jessica's Will's so bad in the deck.
It's terrible.
It's so bad. I know it's like it's a 2 mana commander, but you can't morph creatures from exile.
Yep.
So if you draw them off of Jessica's Will, you can't play them face down. And then it's a 3-color deck. The red is sort of the least used.
This is like one of the worst places you could put a Jessica's Will.
And I remember this because we were like, please keep reprinting Jessica's Will. And I don't want to argue against it. But why is this the deck it went in?
It was like they were like, we can't give you Jessica's Will if you're going to have to use it.
That's for sure, yeah.
Yeah, I just thought this deck was terrible in a lot of ways. And it's a shame because like Naya is one of my favorite like color combos. So I always see those decks and go, oh, sweet, what cool new things are they getting? And this one, it was just bad.
What'd you give this one?
I gave this a D.
Yep.
Makes
Murph?
sense. Yeah, I gave it a C, literally for the reason that you were saying, Jordan, was that, I don't think I can give a below average ranking to a deck that has reprinted Jessica's Will. I just don't think I can do it.
I think mine would have been an F if it didn't have Jessica's Will in the deck.
That honestly makes sense, because this deck is still like pretty clunky out of the box. The commander just doesn't really do what you want. Like, the deck needs some sort of like evasion or something, because by the time you have your commander out on 2, and then you morph something on 3, and then you attack with the morph on turn 4, everyone's got something. They can block your morph. And then your deck is just stopped in its tracks and it can't do anything. And so then you're like, well,
you tried to build this commander.
I tried to build this commander. I tried to build this commander from scratch.
I remember having a conversation about this because you were like, I think there's stuff out there.
I was struggling so hard with it because I as you were saying, did the exact same thing of, I think there's more to this deck than what's in here to try to make it a functional like deck. And there just wasn't really.
Yeah.
And it was very sad because I love morphs. Murph loves morphs, I know, crazy. But it's something that I'm like, this commander is just not doing what I need in order to make a morph deck functional.
Yep.
Yeah. It like for being a 2-mana commander, that turns things up. That all sounds powerful.
And it draws
except for
cards, and you're like, that
it
could
draws
be good.
cards if they hit.
Yeah.
Like it really needed to give them some kind of evasion or some, like death touch or menace or something to make these 2/2s worth playing face down. And it just felt like it had one too many restrictions on it I agree. It like isn't a fun precon to upgrade. It isn't a great one to play. The reprints are strong, but weird. It just it missed the mark pretty big for me. So I gave this one a D as well. Oh, sorry, Murph, where did you land?
Oh, I said a C.
You said a C? Great.
But I totally understand D.
D.
Tear Murph apart for how high he was on this deck.
D for Coust. Yeah, I was so disappointed in this deck.
Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
really
Like,
sad.
I think 794 ranked commander says it all.
Naya morphs plus the commander reads good and it just stinks.
Up next is the Deep Clue Sea with the face commander Morshka, Undersea Sleuth, famous not a merfolk.
What?
Green, white, blue for a legendary Vidalcan fish detective.
Sure.
She's a 2/3. It says you have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, investigate. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Morshka. So this is a deeply boring commander, in my opinion. But it is relatively popular. It's number 301 of the ranked commanders on EDH Rec. I have never played against this deck in real life, but...
Have you not?
No. Oh, that's
Damen
not true.
built it?
Damon built
Damen
it.
built
I've never
it.
played against this precon in real life. But yes, I played against Damon's deck. And Damon's deck is like a good deck.
I've lost to it
and makes a really big Morshka.
Yeah.
It is a green, a white, a blue deck with a theme around investigating, so making clue tokens, card draw, especially second draw stuff, and generally tokens, like the non-artifact tokens, kind of. The bang for your buck value was the best of the year at $4.22, sky high reprint value.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
And when you read like the list of cards that were reprinted, it's absurd. The average price per reprint was $2.56, above average for the average price per reprint in this deck. The backup commander was Sophia, Dogged Detective, who's a real cutie, but
nice.
is
I
like
this
sort of
card.
unrelated. I don't know. Also has a clue food thing going on, I guess. The most valuable reprint of this deck was Benny Brack's Zoologist at $21.
Great reprint.
Yeah, it also had like
It had Farewell,
but
Yeah, crazy.
like a couple other things
the
too.
one I'm thinking of is had Coma in it,
Yes,
didn't it?
that's right. It had Coma.
Just bananas.
Yeah, the reprint packages.
The most played new card was On the Trail at 13,576 decks on EDH Rec. That's the one that, like, whenever you draw your second card, you can put a land into play.
This is a good one. Josh used it to great effect in the Bloomburrow Game Nights
It's
episode.
good. It also had Tangle Trove Kelp, which is the one that turns all your clues into 6/6s, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, something to do with those clues.
Yeah, it's like another clue finisher. So this deck had a lot going for it, I think, off the, like, from the numbers. A lot of what we've listed is really positive. But let's talk about what we actually thought of this deck. Murph, I'll have you go first.
Okay. Yes, I liked this deck. I think this deck was really good in what it set out to do. It does like bleed from the clue token into like generic tokens a little bit too much. But I've seen plenty of other precons in the past just be like, hey, here's a clue commander, and half your deck is things that make other tokens that aren't clues. And it's like, okay, well, thanks a lot. Not particularly helpful. This one's more like, a quarter to a third of your stuff is like not clue token based stuff. So I was impressed with that. I would love to see it go further and be a little bit more focused, especially with all the products that we're getting these days. But I thought it still did a pretty good job. Like you said, it has the finishers. It adds a couple things like the clue finisher. I think it's decent at closing out games. It's pretty resonant with people. People love just like casting extra things, cracking some clues, building up a giant creature. And that's something that I love to do. And so I think that this commander, you said it was a little bit boring, but it is a little bit more like open-ended.
Sure, yeah.
In the deck that you can build around it, which I do like. Like, sure, maybe you do want to go like a full-on token build, and then it can just give you that extra clue. Or maybe you go full in on that, draw the extra cards, and don't worry too much about the clue aspect. And that's just there to like give you a little bit more gas. Like, there's multiple things you can do with it. And like you were saying, all of the reprints in this deck are excellent. And so as a result, I gave this an A. I think this is a very, very good deck that could use a little bit more focus and has a little bit of clunk in it, but not too bad.
Cool. What do you think, Jordan?
I'm down on this deck.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I know. And what I would say is I'm definitely biasing myself to a little more towards how bland I just kind of think it feels. And yeah, there's, I guess,
Cool factor counts.
the cool factor like really hurt it for me. When I see one that's like, you know, white, blue, green, it's just an engine on a commander. It makes tokens and clues. Like, I've just seen these things so many times before.
Totally fair.
And it had some good like reprints in it and that kind of thing, but I don't know, that just didn't bring it up all that much for me. Like, I couldn't imagine myself buying and upgrading this deck and thinking that it's like, oh, one of the coolest, most interesting commanders I have, which, you know, is a hard bar to pass for a lot of things, but I don't know. It was just, it didn't resonate with me. And, you know, when I did the little evaluation of the different things, I'd say it was probably like right on the level of being a B or a C. And I just sort of was like, dropping it down to a C.
Yeah.
Just for how I felt about it.
Yeah, you got to go with the vibes.
Yep.
I was right in between you two on this one. I agree there's a lot that you can do with this deck out of the box. If you bought it, I think there's ways that you could go to upgrade it, and there's ways that you could rip it apart and use the pieces very effectively, which is kind of what I want out of a precon. I want a place to go and you to be able to give it to somebody and or to play with it and have a direction for it. I thought it was extremely complicated in terms of deck design. It doesn't have to be for new players, but the fact that you had like a dog backup commander was a real red herring for me in terms of like, this is a very complex, like this had Academy Manufactor in it. Like, it's crazy.
Academy Manufactors and replacement effects and everything just like cause so many issues.
It's a really complicated deck to play. So I wasn't as enthusiastic about it as you were, but I do recognize that there's a lot of positives to this one. And that means that our command zone grade will give it a B.
Right in the middle.
All right.
All right, last one from Murders at Karlov Manor is Revenant Recon with Mirko, Obsessive Theorist. This is a blue and a black for a vampire detective. He's a 1/3 with flying and vigilance. Whenever you surveil, put a +1/+1 counter on Mirko. And at the beginning of your end step, you may return target creature with power less than Mirko's from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. This is a blue and black deck. It was focusing on surveilling and reanimating. I was big into a lot of the surveil synergies that were in the main set. Its bang for your buck was $3.84. Very, very high.
Also quite good, yeah.
Less than Deep Clue C, but still quite high. And the average price per reprint is $2.47. Again, above average. The backup commander, in case you've forgotten, is Marvo Deep Operative.
Marvo!
It's an octopus that clashes, yes.
Octopus in the neighborhood.
The most valuable reprint was Rise of the Dark Realms at $25. And the most played new card is Unshakable Tail in 8,083 decks on EDH Rec. Unshakable Tail is like whenever you surveil, you return this to your hand.
Great, because I
it's in your
totally
graveyard.
didn't remember what it did. You said the name, I'm just going to
That's
like
like
nod
not
along.
even true. It surveils at the beginning of your upkeep, and then you can sack a clue to return it from your graveyard to your hand.
Sure.
And it investigates. It's a clue thing.
Great.
It keeps coming back. That's the important part.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
Jordan, talk about this deck for me.
I really like this deck.
Me too.
So I know that like Demure Reanimator is not like the most original way to do things, but I think it's such a cool, fun archetype, especially like if you're getting into Commander. I remember Reanimator being one of the first times I was like, oh, sweet. What an awesome like setup. And one of the things I really love about this deck is one, as soon as like when you play this, it's 2 mana. I mean, it's 2 colors. So the mana base plays pretty well. It plays pretty strong out of the box. The Commander kind of does its thing. And the reprints it has in it, like, I know that we mentioned Rise of the Dark Realms,
There's
but
necromancy in this list.
Necromancy.
Yeah.
It has
Thank
Animate
goodness,
Dead.
yeah. Great
like,
stuff.
If you bought this and gave it to someone who was just interested in making a Reanimator deck, it just has a lot of the pieces that you're going to want.
But probably don't give it to a new person and say, here, figure out Animate Dead. Good luck.
But either way, it's a whole list of great cards for that archetype that you're gonna want for other decks you play in the future, or if you upgrade it and that kind of thing. And like, I just looked at Marvo Deep Operative.
It's awesome.
I know like the backup commander is only like a small element of it, but I love how much like Sam, one of our VFX editors, saw Marvo and was like, oh my God, it can clash. And he wanted
Clash.
to build that.
Yeah.
And I just love that sort of thing. So, I mean, this deck was a slam dunk for me. I gave it an A.
Yeah. Murph?
Yeah, I also gave it an A. I basically echo all of Jordan's sentiments. I love Dimir Reanimator as a concept, and there are like different ways that you can go with this commander. Because I remember like we were talking about it, and you were like, "Well, what if we made this like clones and stuff that has like 0 power in the
Yeah,
graveyard?"
I built Mirko clones. Like,
Yeah.
I have this commander. It's
So then you don't have to worry about how big Mirko's power is. You can just be like, great, it's a 1/3 or whatever it is.
That's cool.
that reanimates 0/0 power stuff.
And leave it like that. And so I was like, dang, that is really cool. And so the amount of directions that you can go with it, and just it's not broken because it has that finality counter. Like, you're doing something cool, you're cheating the mana cost, but you're not going to break this absolutely in half, but you're going to get great value out of it. I think it's a great design. The deck overall isn't the most cohesive thing in the world, which keeps it from being truly an S for me, but I also gave it an A.
Yeah. I'm an A as well. I think this one is super fun, super smart. It's a different sort of take on Reanimator, where it's built into your commander, but it's also has this engine that it alludes to in the deck, the surveil thing,
Yeah,
which
you have to
it
work
leans
for it a
into the
little bit.
surveil really hard to be able to reanimate those big things.
Yep.
Or you can build around some smaller power, high impact creatures, which is another cool way to do it. The reprint value was there. I'm an A as well, which means our final grade for Revenant Recon is an A. Woo! All right, we've got lots more precons to talk about in this episode, but before that, we have to hear a few words from our sponsors.
I probably wrote these.
This show is sponsored by Liquid IV.
Season's greetings, cool cats! This year, I, Jetmir, Nexus of Revels, will throw the most perfect holiday party! This whole crime family will come together as the Halo Fountain! Well, look. We may have used up all of our angel juice at my Meowloween masquerade, but fear not. I found a new source of hydration to keep everyone fully pumped. Liquid IV! It's the best way to stay hydrated through the holidays, with 8 vitamins and nutrients, plus 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink. 1 stick of Liquid IV with 16 ounces of water hydrates better than water alone, so you can tear, pour, and live more! Never let the party leave you parched again, whether you need to stay vigilant on Commander Night, trample the dance floor, or double strike a pose on the runway. Proper hydration is a must. Halo was good, but this pina colada flavor is simply divine. Hey, how do they make this stuff?
No angels were harmed in the making of Liquid IV.
Stay hydrated through the holidays with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code COMMAND at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code COMMAND at liquidiv.com.
The holidays are a magical time, wouldn't you say?
I wouldn't say it like that, but yeah.
You get to share so many fun memories with family and friends, but wouldn't it be great to do that year-round?
Definitely, which is why this year we're giving the gift of Aura Frames.
These days, a lot of families are really spread out, but with Aura Frames, everyone can still see those big milestones, silly moments, or epic board states your parents can pretend to understand.
Setup takes only 2 minutes, and with free unlimited storage, you can invite as many people as you want to upload to their heart's content. So no matter how big your family is, everyone can share in one place. No more asking your parents to navigate 1,000 different social media platforms.
Plus, you can upload from anywhere in the world, so even when you're on vacation, everyone can see those stunning pics right away.
Or you can preload your frame, so it's filled with fun memories right out of the box.
So this year, get your family family in Aura that's actually playable.
Oh yeah, Aura's a card type. That's clever.
Save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames by using promo code CommandZone at checkout.
That's auraframes.com, promo code CommandZone. This deal is exclusive to listeners, so get yours now in time for the holidays. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back, everybody. We are talking about all of the precons in 2024, and we're going to jump back into it with Fallout. And the first Fallout precon, Hail Caesar.
Or Kaisar, depending on who you're asking.
Kaisar. That guy's Legion's Emperor. He is 1 red, white, black for a 4/4 legendary human soldier. Whenever you attack, you may sacrifice another creature. When you do, choose 2. Create 2 1/1 red and white soldier creature tokens with haste that are tapped and attacking. Okay. You draw a card and lose 1 life, or Caesar deals damage equal to the number of creature tokens you control to target opponent. I remember reading this one and just being like, wow, those are like all really good. And you get to pick 2. Caesar's sweet. He's number 106 in the ranked commanders on EDH Rec. So clearly resonated with a lot of people. Interesting build. And people really did like the Fallout decks a lot. This is a white, black, red deck overall. Its archetype is tokens and aristocrats and like that sacrifice stuff that we were talking about. Its bang for your buck was $1.53, which is below average. I do want to do a little bit of a asterisk on Fallout because this one has more new cards than it does reprint value. So its bang for your buck values are a little skewed. And it's Makes just sense. Because they don't have as many reprints. So it's better for us to pay attention to the average price per reprint of this deck, which is $1.87.
That's still a little below average.
Still a little below average, but that gives it a fairer chance in the reprint discussion. The backup commander of this one was Mr. House himself, popular, powerful, everywhere. The most valuable reprint in the deck was Ruinous Ultimatum, sitting at $11 at time of printing. And the most played new card is Kellogg Dangerous Mind, which is in 18,000-ish decks on EDH Rec.
Ooh.
Kellogg is the one that, like, when he attacks, you make a treasure, and you can sack 5 treasures to gain control of stuff.
Thought he was the one that made Frosted Flakes.
No, that's a different one.
He's more than good.
He's great. I thought you were going to say you're thinking of Tony the Tiger.
No, I think you got it right.
Cool.
Tony the Tiger has a dangerous mind.
Now, Jordan, you built a Mr. House deck.
I did.
So what do you think of this precon as a whole?
I was a little disappointed. I still, so this is the precon that I bought of the Fallout precons. And I thought it was cool, but overall, I'll just say I was a little disappointed with the Fallout precons kind of in general, as far as like power level and cards and stuff like that. I did think this deck like played pretty well when you did it because it's just like Mardu tokens. So, you know, you just played things, you went wide, and then you got to use Caesar's effects for everything. But like Mr. House really felt kind of like jammed in there, not necessarily really part of the deck.
Definitely not.
In any way. And things like Ruinous Ultimatum, like it's a cool card, but you're not going to play it in many decks. And I kind of, it makes me sad when reprints are ones that I'm like, well, I'm going to play that in maybe this deck, but it's not going to get me much, you know, other thing going on.
It's also hard to cast in a precon mana base because you're probably not playing it on 7. You're probably playing it on like 9, maybe 10. And at that point, like, that's almost game over time.
Yeah.
Flavor-wise, I really like this one because it focused a little more on the Fallout New Vegas stuff, which, by the way, Murph has not played, everybody.
You sicking chat on Murph.
I started playing Fallout 3 because I was like, I want to start at the beginning and then I will make my way to New Vegas and then 4 in due time. And Jordan was like, no, you just got to start with New Vegas. I'm like, that's just how I like playing games. Just start at the beginning. I know some aspects are going to be worse. That's
Weird.
okay.
Is Fallout 3 the beginning? Oh, I don't know. Okay.
Of that style.
Yes,
Fallout 2 is so
all
good.
right. Going on, I gave this deck a C.
Yeah. That's fair. Murph?
Yeah.
Having never played New Vegas.
Oh. having never played New Vegas, I didn't like this deck very much. I think we've kind of learned with these Universes Beyond Commander sets, especially with Doctor Who, is that what they end up doing is just jamming in a lot of legendary creatures, because there's a lot of characters that they want to like pull from for these sets. They want to like say, hey, here's this character from this game and put that in. Here's this character from this game. Maybe they're all from New Vegas. I don't know. But they want to try to have as much representation of that as possible. The problem is a bunch of legendary creatures don't usually tend to play well together. They're usually meant to be like, well, here's a fun, perhaps build around, or maybe here's something that goes this direction. Here's another legendary creature that goes this direction. So yes, you could sacrifice them to Caesar's ability, but like there are a bunch of like 3 and 4 mana legendary creatures that are like, it feels bad to sacrifice those. Like this is supposed to be a token deck. This does not make that many tokens. Like this deck just doesn't. Like you might have 1 token on the battlefield after you have sacrificed something, or 2, I guess. Caesar makes 2. But like ideally what you want is to try to get a creature out early and then put your commander out. And then you need to attack and also have another creature to sacrifice in order for it to do its thing.
It was a big part of the upgrade for this deck.
The deck just doesn't do that. And as a result, it feels so clunky and you're not doing anything until like turn 5, turn 6. And at that point, you're like, great, I drew a couple cards, but I'm not really doing anything.
Yeah.
And so I just don't like how this deck plays. I appreciate the legendary creatures. I think they're cool. But overall, I just gave this deck a D.
Yeah.
Not very good. Probably buy a couple pieces if you like some of the cards in it, would be my recommendation.
Sure. I agree. We were talking about this a little bit. Like Universes Beyond is very tricky because they want to make cards that are flavorful and they want to include all these creatures, and they all sort of fight with each other and make for this mess that doesn't quite work. And you end up with having Mr. House thrown in and everybody being like, Mr. House is awesome, I'm just going to build that.
Yeah.
And then the decks end up getting deconstructed for something else. And I think that's an expectation that we can have about Universes Beyond decks, is that mechanically they're going to function a little bit worse than the average deck. And reprint values are going to be a little bit lower because the focus is on flavor and on fun and on like trying to make things feel authentic. And what we're here to talk about today is just, does this thing work as a deck?
Yep.
And it doesn't really. It's fine and has other things going for it.
You will play creatures. I cannot guarantee you will do anything with them.
that's kind of where I landed.
Sometimes you'll go,
like,
I know that one from the game.
yeah,
not me.
It's like the deck doesn't work that well, but that's probably not why you're buying it. You're buying it because you're excited about these cards.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, I gave it a C, where it's like,
I think it's fair.
Which means our Command Zone grade overall is a C for this one.
C for Kaiser.
Kaiser.
Or Caesar, depending on who you're talking to.
Up next is the Mutant Menace deck with the face commander, the Wise Mothman. This is the one that when it enters or attacks, each player gets a rad counter, and then whenever one or more non-land cards are milled, you put a +1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of non-land cards milled this way. The Wise Mothman is very cool and is number 51 of the ranked commanders on EDH Rec. This is the most built face commander of 2024.
Wow.
This is a very popular commander
sense.
and likely a very popular precon, which means it's why it's online all those times. But it is a blue, a black, a green deck with mill and rad counters and doing +1/+1 counters, but mostly it's doing, so it's got like some proliferate stuff going on. The bang for your buck for this one is $1.33, even worse than Hail Caesar.
Woof.
And its average price per reprint is $1.81, comparable to Hail Caesar, but again, below average. Backup commander for this was the Master Transcendent. That's the TV with arms.
Oh, yeah. Very cool.
You guys remember that one?
He's all like gooey, right?
He's yucky. Yeah, he's a yucky one. The most valuable reprint is Inexorable Tide at $16 at time of printing. And the most played new card is in 24,800 decks on EDH Rec. It's Power Fist.
Good.
Power Fist. Fist.
I just put Power Fist into an Anzrag the Quake Mold deck that I'm building.
Sweet.
So I'm a big fan of it.
the power.
Fist.
I mean, that's a lot of decks. 25,000 is pretty good.
That is very high.
For a most played new card. Murph, tell us what you thought about this deck.
Yeah, I like this deck. I thought this deck was probably the one that got off the best with the Fallout decks. Like, it didn't rely quite as much on, well, here's this character that you could potentially know. It focused more on, like, the rad counters and the milling. And I think that helped carry the theme a lot better without relying so much on those legendary creatures. Obviously, it still had plenty of them. But I think that the deck just overall functioned better. And I did like the rad counters. They were a little bit complicated for me to, like, get a grasp on when I first saw them. But after a while, I was like, oh, they're just inevitably you're going to mill a non-land. At some point. And so it's like, okay, however many rad counters you have, you will eventually mill a non-land and lose a life from that. So I like that. It just keeps milling things. It does do damage. And so you can put a bunch on yourself if you want to try to self-mill, or you can try to do that to opponents and try to like get their life total down with them. So I really liked the play, the like push and pull of the rad counters, where you're like, it could be good, but it's also got this bad thing to it. And so I really liked that a lot. And yeah, overall, I thought it just played the best out of all of the decks. And so I gave this one a B. Still not amazing, I don't think, but I think it was reasonably cohesive.
Sure.
Especially for Universes Beyond Precon.
Jordan?
I basically completely agree. I thought out of the box, this is the one that felt like the most coherent deck. I like the flavor of it. It was really neat. I mean, rad counters is just like a cool piece of game design going on there. Like, it really did kind of give the feeling of something that like slowly degrades you over time. It drains away your library and your life. You know, if you get too many, it'll just kill you. But a little bit's not going to be too bad.
Yeah.
And then it turned it into a positive in some ways. And I just thought that was really neat design. Yeah, it just seemed like a cool deck. And the cards in it felt relevant and neat. And I enjoyed it a lot. So I also gave it a B.
I was a little higher on this one than you guys. I have never played Fallout. I don't care about Fallout. And I looked at this deck and was like, okay, I want to.
It shows, Rachel.
Like, but I was like, I want to play this. Like,
Yeah.
I want to play this deck. It's cool. I like the Wise Mothman. I liked the Master Transcendent. I was like, both of these commanders I'm interested in. I ended up putting them in the 99 of a deck I already had, because I was like, I don't think I can have multiple Sultai Mill decks. But
Is it Sidisi?
yeah. But I was really engaged by these cards that I didn't know the lore behind, which means that they're very cool mechanically, and it had a lot of cool new cards that I was excited about putting into decks. Fewer reprints that I'm like stoked on, but it like this one also had Atomize, which is just like destroy a non-land permanent, proliferate, and Mutational Advantage, which is just permanents with counters on them, gain hexproof and indestructible.
It just has a lot of neat cards.
Yeah, like those are great in counters decks and mill decks and planeswalker decks and
A lot of things you can use
a lot of different.
places.
Yeah, I thought it was a very like interesting deck, and it played pretty good. Is like where I sort of landed on.
Yeah.
It. Obviously, it takes a ding in the reprint value, but I think it makes up for it in the new cards. So for me, I gave this one an A, but it does mean that our final ranking is going to be a B.
A B.
A B. Finally, Scrappy. Oh, not finally. We have two more. Scrappy Survivors with the face commander Dogmeat Ever Loyal. He's a good boy.
Very good.
Dogmeat is ranked number 313 on EDH, which is like pretty high, but not nearly as high as the other ones in this set. This is a white, red, and green deck. It's like equipment and Voltron and had aura stuff going on as well. Its bang for your buck value was an abysmal $1.18 per reprint value, and its average price per reprint was not much better at $1.41. Its backup commander was Preston Garvey Minuteman. He like puts auras on your lands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Its most valuable reprint was Heroic Intervention, which was at $15 at time of printing. And its most played new card was Codsworth Handy Helper, which was in 25,000 decks on EDH Rec at time of recording. What did you think about this one, Jordan?
I like this one.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good. I have it, well, I'll just say now, I have it at B rank, which is the same as the mutant one.
Yeah.
I would say I thought it was a little worse than that overall, but I feel like it played pretty decently. like when you kind of pulled it out of the box, and it had some neat auras and equipment, which is something you don't. I mean, you see equipment focused on a lot in like Boros decks and that kind of thing, but I don't know. It just had some fun pieces, and I liked, even though it had the same problem a lot of the Fallout decks do, where it just had a lot of things that were like kind of disconnected about it. I liked a lot of the ones that were in there disconnected. Like I think this is the one that had 3-Dog in it.
Yes.
And I thought he was a super cool card and commander.
This was also the funniest deck, which was cool.
Absolutely. It just had a bunch of like silly little cards and things that felt very Fallout.
Your commander's a dog.
Yeah.
Your commander's a dog.
Yeah.
And Preston Garvey like makes settlements, which if you've played Fallout 4 is great.
There's another settlement that needs your help. I marked it on your map.
I guess it's like I like the flavor in this one a lot, and it didn't feel too clunky or bad, and so that kind of like pulled it up a little bit for me. So I put it at a B.
Sure. Murph?
Yeah, I put this at a C. I don't love how this deck plays out of the gates. It's fine. Like Jordan said, I do think that the individual cards is where this deck shines the most, where there's just all sorts of like Voltron-y type cards that go in this. There's like tons of cool auras, tons of cool equipments that you look at that and you're just like, ooh, I could slot this in this Voltron deck. Maybe I'm just a little bit biased because I love Voltron decks. I love making one thing big and then just like one-shotting people. That's a thing I love to do.
Big dog.
So I liked it from that aspect, but yeah, it was still definitely bogged down by there's a lot of pieces that are just kind of disconnected and they don't work great together. And so I gave it a C as a result. So a little lower than Jordan on that, but I don't mind this deck.
Yeah. I was at a C range as well for Scrappy Survivors. There's a lot of pieces in it that made me laugh out loud, which was cool, but I didn't really see how the deck was going to function. I don't love decks that combine auras and equipments into one deck.
It makes it a little clunky.
Really harms your synergy, and I think this one really suffered for it.
Oh,
it's really setting yourself up for blowouts, too.
Yeah, it's just so many eggs in one dog basket. And
I
do love junk
adorable
tokens,
dog basket.
Junk tokens I thought were pretty neat.
Completely agree.
Yeah, junk tokens were one of the cooler things in this deck. I sort of wish that they had just picked a lane, and I think the deck would have played a lot better, and it would have, like, if they had picked auras, which I think they should have, then it makes like 3-Dog and other stuff just work a lot better and feel a lot better.
And if on those extra pieces that you want to include in the deck, you want it to say equipment or aura so that they can slot in more decks, I think that's totally fine and cool, but the deck itself should probably just pick a lane and go that way.
Yeah, I agree. C for Scrappy Survivors overall. Finally, Science. This is Dr. Madison Lee, ranked 348 among commanders on EDH. Is a white, blue, and red energy and artifacts deck. So this one is built around the energy mechanic, printed a bunch of new energy cards in it. Its bang for your buck value was $1.05. This is the worst of the year. It's extremely low reprint value, even when you consider that there are fewer reprints in this one, because the average price per reprint was $1.29. So that is, again, the total reprint value divided by the number of reprints, so it balances. And that is the worst average price per reprint of the year. So that just had the lowest quality reprints of any deck out of the year. Its backup commander was Liberty Prime Recharge.
A Kyle Hill favorite.
Yep.
The most valuable reprint was Panharmonicon at $7.50. This, predictably, was the worst reprint. It was the worst, highest reprint value of any deck throughout the year. And its most played new card is very expensive, actually, is Nuka-Cola Vending Machine.
Super sweet card.
In 33,350 decks on EDH. That's a ton. That's many, many decks on EDH.
That's why it's so expensive, because this is its only printing.
Yeah. I think it's the most played card from the Fallout sets.
I think so.
Yeah.
That is a guess on my end, but I think so.
I was
an
looking
artifact
this up
can go
when I
in
was
multiple
looking through
things,
it, and it's artifact, it plays in anything, and I think it's the most played.
Cares about tokens. Very, very popular.
Jordan, what did you think about this one?
I was not a fan of this one.
Yeah.
And I'll admit I'm maybe a little biased. I don't like energy. I don't like energy as a mechanic. And I think maybe a big part of that is when I kind of got back into Magic most recently, and I'm still back into Magic from that, was around Amonkhet, and I started playing some Standard, and Energy like wrecked Standard.
Sure, yeah.
It was like, it felt like parasitic, it felt annoying, it was like, when you build things with Energy, it's very on rails because you pretty much just have to use Energy cards. I don't find it interesting to build. I don't love having it. The Energy cards so rarely fit in any other deck, and I think that hurt the relevance of a lot of the reprints in this deck. I think I almost would have been a D on this deck if it didn't have like Nuka Cola and some cool cards in it. And I've also seen some decks built around it that seem like pretty cool and pretty relevant, but I ended up giving it a C.
Sure. Murph?
Yeah, I was definitely higher on this than you, Jordan. This would probably be my second favorite of the Fallout decks. I just thought it was very smart for them to pair artifacts with energy. And the commander says, hey, play artifacts, get energy stuff.
Yeah.
And that fills in a lot of the gaps from what energy deck potentially is. And because energy came out in Kaladesh, which had an artifact theme, I think it's just such a good overlap that you're able to have with this commander, that it has good upgrade paths, whereas a lot of other stuff doesn't when you're doing the energy theme. And this was the first time that we actually got like a proper energy commander. So for that, I gave it a B, and I think it does play like fine. Like it plays pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I like casting artifacts and getting energy and tracking the little energy on the side and be like, I'm going to pay this much energy to get this little effect on this guy. And yeah, overall, liked it. Didn't love it, but liked it. So B.
I was also a B on this one. I think it's like more interesting. I thought it fit Fallout really well. It played better than the Humans one or the Scrappy Survivors one, in my opinion. I just thought the deck functioned better, and that's largely because it was so parasitic and because all of the energy cards work really well together.
Yeah,
they're all energy cards. I agree with Kyle when he swapped Liberty Prime into the command zone in terms of just like, it's a better card. But I liked that Dr. Madison Lee gave you this sort of like fiddly energy thing, which feels very much like tooling and playing with, it feels like science. Feels like science stuff. You guys get it. Science. So I did like this one a lot. The reprint value is really low, but I didn't really ding the Fallout decks too much for that, just because of the nature of Universes Beyond. Yeah. So I too gave this one a B, which means our overall grade for science is a B.
B.
Wahoo. All right. Outlaws of Thunder Junction. This first deck is Desert Bloom, which is for your face commander is Yuma Proud Protector. So this is the desert deck. Yuma is ranked 324 of the ranked commanders on EDH, so kind of right in the middle. I looked up the average for this. What's the average? The most popular face commander average is 295. So we're right about what we expect for a face commander on EDH. This is a white, a red, and a green deck. Its archetype was lands and self-mill and some tokens, but generally deserts. Do desert stuff. Make deserts, sack desert, play deserts. The bang for your buck for this deck was $2.01. That is well below average for a bang for your buck. And its average price per reprint was $1.39. Again, well below average. The backup commander was Kiri, Talented Sprout, a little plant druid. The most valuable reprint was Ancient Green Warden at $20. And the most played new card is Cactus Preserve. 14,452 decks on EDH.
Very cool.
It's the land that gets big for the mana value.
So cool.
All right, let's get into it. Murph, what did you think about this one?
So for reference, I didn't have a ton of experience with the Thunder Junction Precons compared to a lot of other ones. So these are mostly from like very limited experience of like just doing some gold fishing, seeing some gameplay of videos about these types of decks. So from that experience, seemed pretty good. The deck does what it sets out to do. Deserts are really cool. Having a commander deck around it is really cool. It's a really good theme for like landfall type stuff. Is like, hey, here's lands, but make them deserts. And so I just thought that was pretty neat. The reprint, not the value, but there's a couple good reprints in here, like the Ancient Green Warden, like you were saying. So those are all pretty cool, pretty neat. Overall, I gave it a B. Nothing spectacular, but solid. You'll get what you pay for.
Yeah, I also gave it a B, and it got big points for me just because I think deserts is a cool theme and one that it's nice that we got a cool new commander for and a couple things like
Mister,
that.
I came back in Amonkhet. Of course you do.
Deserts rule.
Bias.
Yeah, no, but I like land themes in general. I think they tend to be like a fun because when you start playing Magic, you often are like lands suck, and having a couple decks that like really use it is kind of fun. This, the cards weren't super relevant after they came out and stuff, but I still thought this was a good, fun one, so I gave it a B.
It didn't have relevant new cards, and it didn't really have the reprint value, but this deck was sick.
Yeah.
It was a cool way to think about lands. I really liked that it encouraged you to sacrifice your lands, which is not like every land strategy that we've seen before is play a bunch of lands, benefit from having a lot of lands.
Landfall, land drop.
And like, look how many I have. This is as big as the number I have. And this one made you be a little bit riskier. Sack your lands, bring them back. And that is a cool archetype to play with in a precon. So I really liked that element of it. I'm obviously biased. I have a Hazizon deck, which is extremely similar.
So much bias going on here.
But I gave this one a B for vibes. B for vibes. It was cool. And if you wanted to build these deserts, which is cool, you could buy it. And it was a good, solid start.
That's exactly where my B came from.
B for vibes for Desert Bloom.
You guys are bad at spelling.
Up next is Grand Larceny. This one was the Gonti Canny Inquisitor deck. This is currently ranked 253 among commanders on EDH Rec, so still about average within that sort of 300 range. This deck was blue, black, and green Sultai. Its archetype was theft and also combat damage triggers. Those two things, which, its commander sort of encapsulates. The bang for your buck here was $2.71, so bang on average for the most part. And its average price per reprint was $1.65, so a hair below average overall. Just slightly lower quality reprints. The backup commander, of course, is Felix Five Boots.
Felix 5 boots.
Five boots.
I got 5 boots.
He gets to make up how many legs he has, so he gets to choose a number of boots.
He's an ooze.
Its most valuable reprint was Twilight Mire at $9.50. This is the
Not great.
green-black filter land.
Land. Oh, boy.
And its most played new card was Savvy Trader in 13,500 decks. This one cared about casting spells from places that weren't your hand. Goes right along with the theft and combat damage triggers themes we have going on. Jordan, what did you think about this one?
I upgraded this deck, and I liked the design of Gonti, and I thought that the deck had some potential and is pretty cool, but the precon itself didn't really get there for me. Reprints were pretty bad. The new cards didn't feel all that relevant, and it felt like it needed an upgrade before it was going to do what it was supposed to do. Yeah, I mean, I gave it a C.
Yeah.
And I wanted to like it a little bit more than I ended up actually doing in the thing. But it's also...
Yeah. It felt the most crimey.
Yeah, it certainly did. I kind of thought the theme didn't feel super inspired.
Yeah.
But it was neat, It stole stuff. I like stealing stuff. I've got a Zara Renegade Recruiter deck, but, that's it. It was a C for me.
Murph?
I'm quite a bit higher on this than Jordan. This is the one out of the Thunder Junction decks that I have the most experience with, and I just like the best. Because I do think that the color combination, the Sultai color combination with the theft effect type of things is pretty cool. I love combat damage triggers, and obviously the commander has overlap with that. And so I don't think it's too much of a problem that it has these two different things, because it's in essence trying to get the combat damage through so that then you can steal stuff and then you start playing the stuff. And as long as you get that stuff going, you're starting to get cards from your opponents, well, then you don't really have to worry too much about what your own deck is doing. Sure. And so I think that the deck plays how it's supposed to, where it scales nicely with pods and everything. And so I like it more than you guys did. So I gave it an A. I think it does what it sets out to do, and I think it does it well. Yeah, the reprints aren't great, but I like the deck.
And to be
A for vibes.
To be fair, that's a point I like about Theft decks, that it scales well with pods. So.
Yes.
I also was kind of low on this deck. I really liked Felix, and he really made me laugh. I was sort of bummed at how narrow the new cards were in this, and all of the Thunder Junction decks were all like hyper focused reprints that just makes them irrelevant long term. And I just don't think this archetype is like stealing stuff from your opponent's decks isn't that good and shouldn't be this hard. And it felt like the deck was really going to struggle to get value out of the theft. So I would have liked more payoffs for theft to be in this deck rather than like enablers for theft. So I think there was like it left a lot to be desired for me. So I ended up giving it a C.
But you can just steal your opponent's payoffs.
Yeah, but then
Problem solved.
their payoffs are like for the number of enchantments you control.
We'll steal their enchantments first.
First, you have to get your deck to work. Then you have to get your opponent's deck to work.
And when it does, it's glorious.
The problem is my opponent's deck sucks. I didn't make
I
them.
want to play my deck.
Stop
not
playing
your
against me,
deck.
Jordan. Come on.
I give this one a C.
Self-burn?
So we had 2 C's and an A, which are a little awkward. They don't really average to a B. They technically average to a C. So I think overall we're going to end up giving Gonti a C plus.
Tisk. I've been
high
beaten by
C.
this deck before.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it fun and interesting.
I had a fun and interesting time playing the game, if that's
All right,
any consolation.
well,
Well, that
true.
doesn't make it fun and interesting.
Up next is Most Wanted. This is the Olivia Opulent Outlaw deck, 504, fourth among ranked commanders on EDH Rec. This is a white, black, and red Mardu deck. Its themes were like outlaws and also treasures, and it had some counter stuff going on. But mostly, this was the outlaws deck. So it was focusing around assassins, mercenaries, pirates, rogues, and warlocks. The bang for your buck value here was $3.19. This was above average. This was like the second highest, I think, of OTJ. And its average price per reprint was $1.82, which means that the quality of reprints, however many there are, was a little low. The backup commander is Vihan Goldwaker. He's cool. He turns treasures into boys.
I like Vihan.
And then the most valuable reprint was Command Beacon at $13.
Great.
Sure, fine. And the most played new card of the deck was Olivia Opulent Outlaw herself.
Yay!
Wow. She showed up in 10,500 decks on EDH Rec. Jordan, tell us what you thought about this one.
This felt kind of unfocused to me. It didn't seem like bad, but it didn't feel inspired to me. And, like the treasures and go wide and counters, like all feel like just themes we've seen 100 times. The reprints felt pretty bad. I think Vihan might be my favorite part of this deck.
I think that's fair.
Because I could see building a deck around him, and I put him in my Mr. House deck, and I think it's pretty cool. But yeah, I gave this another C.
Yeah. Murph, what did you think about this one?
Yeah, this one was one where I basically knew like nothing about it until you said, hey, we're doing this episode. Make sure you're up to date on what's going on with all of these precons. And I was like, oh, what's this card do? Oh, that's cool. Oh, what does the backup commander do? Oh, that's cool. What are some of the cards in here do? Oh, that's cool. Watched a little bit of gameplay about it. And I was like, yeah, this deck's pretty cool. Like, it does work. Like, it does seem unfocused, but it does tend to do the thing. I mean, to be fair, making treasures, putting 1/1 counters on things are just inherently good abilities.
They're
so
just good things,
it's not like, wow, this deck's going to do absolutely nothing. But you're right. It's not particularly inspired or anything, but it works. So I give it a B.
Yeah.
Fair.
I settled on a C for this one as well. Because, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
The theme, I think, is a little unfocused, and it's largely because the idea of outlaws is a little unfocused.
Yeah.
It's just creature type batching.
There was like a weird lifelink package in this deck where it's like every time you gain life, this happens. I was like, what? How do I gain life? And it was largely because that was a warlock, so it had a couple of like strange side quests that I think were largely a symptom of, just outlaws not really meaning anything other than like being creature types. So I think you're right. It's like generally works fine, and the cards in it are fine, and it's fine. So I gave it a C, and so did the command zone.
Makes sense.
Up next is Quick Draw, the final deck from Thunder Junction. This was helmed by Stella Lee, wildcard, Spellslinger. She's ranked 113 among commanders on EDH Rec, so well above average. Stella Lee, far and away the most popular commander from Thunder Junction. The colors of this deck were blue and red. This was a Spellslinger Stormy copy deck. Definitely spells. The bang for your buck here was $3.68, well above average, and the average price per reprint was $2.63. Again, quite above average. Backup commander, nobody remembers, but I liked Eris a lot. It's Eris Roar of the Storm. It's whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you make those dragons with prowess.
I completely forgotten Eris.
Yeah, Eris is cool. Most valuable reprint was Veyron, Voice of Duality, which was sitting at $17 when this deck was reprinted. And the most played new card is quite popular at 22,500 decks. It's Thunderclap Drake. That's the Drake that makes your instants and sorceries cost less, and you can sack it to like copy spells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that is Stella Lee. What did you think of this one, Murph?
I love me a good Spellslinger / Stormy deck.
Yeah.
And I'm always like impressed when they're able to pull it off because it's not an easy thing to design for. And I think this one pulls it off like pretty darn well, where the deck plays and it does its thing, but it doesn't feel like it's taking up a ton of the chess clock. Like obviously Storm decks are always going to do that to some extent, but I feel like this one had a really good balance of you're going to cast some spells, but you're not going to just like cast like 20 spells, right? And so I liked how this deck plays. The fact that I don't know if they're still viable, but there were like CDH builds of this deck running around there for a while. And I just thought like, wow, that is super neat that you can make that happen out of a precon commander. And so I think that's the commander specifically, as well as like the way that the deck built around the commander made this deck like very fun and very cool. Love a lot of the Spellslinger cards that are in here. So I give this an A. I think this is a very good deck.
Cool. What do you think, Jordan?
I like this deck a lot. I'm a sucker for a Spellslinger deck. I think Is It Spellslinger is always just kind of a cool one. This sort of felt like a standout amongst the Thunder Junction ones because it felt like it kind of was the most focused. It had a cleanest theme. It had some more relevant reprints and new cards.
It was the broadest theme for sure.
Yeah. While I won't say it's as interesting to me as Deserts, I gave it a B kind of on the same level as Deserts because I thought overall it was probably a better constructed deck and like better value for what you got. And honestly, like looking at my metric for how I did it, it's like a B that could have been an A, like level B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I landed on an A for this one as well. I agree it's a Spellslinger deck that just works out of the box, which I was pretty shocked by. The only reason I didn't give this an S, honestly, because I do think the deck is like that fun and was that good, is I think they pushed Stella Lee too far.
She's very good.
I don't love precon commanders suddenly going infinite with random things. I don't love it.
Understandable.
We had to do 2 upgrades on this deck because we were like, if you want to put in all the infinite combos, here are the ones you can, and here are the ones if you want to play it regularly. But the problem is when you take a deck that goes infinite that easily to a table, everybody's afraid it's going to go infinite, so they have to kill your commander over and over and over again.
When you make a problem.
A commander too powerful, they can't let you untap with it. That's just not fair for precon players.
The first precon I ever built was Inala. And she goes infinite at the drop of a hat.
She sure does.
So I like that stuff sometimes. But
I know certain people do. It's just I just think it's like that they could have caught that.
Yep, absolutely.
Is how I feel about it. It took us not much time to figure out that goes infinite when you untap her.
Dang, that's crazy.
Overall, we will give this one an A because I do think the deck is sick. I just wish that if you sit down with an upgraded version of Stella, you don't get murdered on the spot.
Have we hit any S's yet?
No S's yet.
No S's yet.
No S's yet.
These decks all stink.
Up next,
S for stink.
Modern Horizons 3. And we're starting with the second Jeskai energy deck of the year. What? Was Satya Aetherflux Genius in the creative energy deck. Satya is ranked 242 among commanders on EDH Rec, so pretty average for a face commander, a little bit above average. This was a blue, white, red energy and artifacts deck.
Thank you. Okay, keep going.
Its bang for your buck was $2.29. Below average. You have to remember for this one, these pre-order prices were very high because everything for Modern Horizons 3 was expensive. And its average price per reprint was $2.61, which is quite above average, and it better be because you paid a lot for it. The backup commander for this deck was sweet. It was Kaith, Famed Mechanist. Like, it populated and proliferated, which is like a cool, weird thing. And its most valuable reprint was Akroma's Will at $24.
Pretty good.
Good one. Its most played new card was Kaith, Famed Mechanist at 7,000 decks on EDH Rex. So pretty irrelevant in terms of new cards. Jordan, we know how you feel about energy. Hit us.
Boo, energy, boo. I'll never forgive you for what you did to Standard.
What'd you give this one?
I gave this a D.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, I didn't like this one at all. I thought it had the exact same problem where it's like, oh, it's another energy deck. And I know they printed a bunch of energy cards in Modern Horizons, so they had to jam it in. But it's like more than any of the other ones in Modern Horizons felt like the thing that they tend to do these days where they have like some new mechanic in the main set. So they pump out a commander deck that doesn't really fit except with the cards from that set for it. And I know Energy's got a little bit more than that, but it ran into the same problems. Like, to me, this being Energy and Artifacts again sort of makes me be like, wow, they really don't have any other ideas for Energy other than like, oh, Artifacts and Energy. Wow, they kind of work together thematically. So I don't know.
I can't believe it wasn't Teamer.
Yeah.
Like,
they could have done something different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was boring. I didn't particularly care about any of the new cards. The reprints were pretty good. But
The reprints were fine.
With the expensiveness of it, this just was D for me.
Yeah. Murph?
Y'all are like, the reprints stink and Akroma's Will is on there. Whatever.
Nah,
I said they were okay.
They were expensive. It was an expensive product. It had to have reprints in it.
True.
You can buy a Chroma's Will on its own, Murph.
Yeah.
True.
Go to cardkingdom.com.
I like this deck. I think this deck is cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, me and Jordan are on different sides of the fence of liking versus not liking Energy. I will give them a mark against it because it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
As
Kinda.
the Fallout. Okay, very much. But like when you think of Modern Horizons 3, the two things that you think of are like Eldrazi and Energy. And so this was one of the things that I was like more excited to play with from Modern Horizons 3 is like, oh, well, what can you do in Commander with Energy? And I think that this deck did great with that. Like, I think the deck played great. It played basically similar to the Fallout one, but you had all the toys from Modern Horizons 3 in addition to play with. So I liked it a lot. I gave it an A, but clearly Jordan does not agree with that. So,
Well, I agree with Jordan on this
no, I'm the one out here.
There's a couple, like Jordan mentioned a few of the things that I don't like about it. I hate that it's exactly the same as another Precon that came out this year. They have to know that. They're like, I know sometimes the left hand doesn't talk to the right hand over there, but they have to know.
But Universes Beyond is always on such like a weird deadline, so I understand why they have to do it.
I don't. Then Modern Horizons 3 adjust. I don't like.
I think
like the fact that this is. They tried to make it like more of an aggressive energy deck. And if you read Satya is an ETB commander with energy incidentally. Like, Satya is not an energy commander, and Kaith is not an energy commander. And
fair.
And then the 99 is full of random energy cards. And then it also has like vehicles that Satya can't copy. Like, the 99 of this deck is a disaster where it like doesn't have ETB creatures and it doesn't have good ways to use energy, and they just didn't know what to do with it. And I think the Fallout energy deck worked better, and the fact that I made two decks and the second one's exactly the same but doesn't work as well is not good design.
I think
in
the
my
reason
opinion.
that they're like the same color and the same strategy is because Energy is a parasitic enough mechanic that they say, well, when you put out new energy cards, it's got to work with the old energy commanders, so they'll be happy with it. So they're putting it in like the same colors and doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm being hard on this deck, but I like Satya is a cool card, and I think is a neat card. I don't think Satya works with the 99. I don't think Kaith works with the 99, and then I don't think the 99 works if you put an energy commander in the command zone. So I think the reason I'm a D on it is just the construction wasn't there for me. It's not that I don't like energy or I don't like Satya. Like, I could probably put Call of this a C and it would be fine, but I was so frustrated when I played this deck by just all of the stuff that didn't work together that I I had to give this one a D.
Perhaps I'm nicer on it because I like see the potential of like, oh, put the Modern Horizons 3 cards in, put the Fallout cards in. Like,
Yeah.
I know where it's going.
There's a
perhaps
great
more so
direction for it,
Yeah,
for
perhaps
sure.
more so than the deck by itself.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think it's neat.
It's
what
neat.
do you want?
That's all right. Well, your neat brings it up to a C.
Yes, we made it up to a C.
Single-handedly pulled it up a letter grade.
Up next, Eldrazi Incursion with the face commander Ulaluk Fused Atrocity. This is number 75 commander on EDH Rec, second highest of the year. This is a 5-color Eldrazi deck with a devoid theme.
Weird.
5-color, no color.
Weird.
5-color, no colors. The bang for your buck value of this deck was $1.09. And that is because the Eldrazi deck was selling for a whopping like $90.
Because Eldrazi are really
It
popular.
was like $100, like immediately.
Yeah.
It was, so we adjusted the bang for your buck here. And this is the worst non-Fallout value. Without the Universes Beyond asterisk on it, this is the worst of the year. The average price per reprint is $2.01. So about average, but not for that much money. The backup commander was Aslask, the Swelling Scourge.
Swelling.
Scourge. And the most valuable reprint was Murph the Boundless at $15. Wow. The most played new card is Eldritch Immunity in 18,500 decks, which is pretty high for a deck that requires colorless to cast. We made you go first and then bullied you last time, Murph. Oh, no, Jordan, you went first.
I went first,
last time.
You still bullied me, though.
Yeah, we
The
definitely
bullying never
bullied
stops.
you, but we'll let you go first on this one.
Yay. Okay. I like this deck. I think it's better than the Zuladoc from the previous year in
I
Commander
agree.
Masters, because that one was just so clunkily made where it's like, I want to cast 7 drops. Here's a bunch of 6 drops in your deck. And you're like, please stop that. So this one gives you a slightly more interesting, at least to me, thing where, hey, you can do all this cool things, but you kind of have to have a 6 color mana base because you have to be able to tap for all this colorless and every single color.
Yeah.
So it is very difficult to do. So when you do have like all these payoffs, it feels very rewarding to do so. And it's not amazing out of the box with the mana base that it currently has, but it's functional. It's
10 color, 10 pain lands.
yeah, it's more functional than like the slivers as well from
Oh, for
Commander
sure.
Masters
Yeah,
last
I
year.
agree.
And so for that, I give it a B. I like it a decent amount.
Jordan?
I pretty much agree. I think I bumped it up a grade. I gave it an A because I actually just think that like 5-color colorless and the Eldrazi's in it, like giving a 5-color shell that can run all these crazy Eldrazi creatures and stuff, I think that's an awesome theme. I really love that kind of thing. It didn't have the most relevant reprints, and a lot of its cards are kind of only played in Eldrazi decks. But
And also
I
kind of
know-
only in this as well for the
That's
color
fair.
mana, yeah.
But like, I know a lot of people are very passionate about Eldrazi. I still remember like when we did Eldrazi as one of the themes in Game Nights Live, the Eldrazi crowd just chanting, and I was like, yeah, everybody loves Eldrazi.
They went
What a
nuts.
cool element. So yeah, I gave it an A, but a lot of that's from vibes.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I was right between a B and an A on this one, and I'm not a big Eldrazi fan, but I was pleasantly surprised by this deck. I laid out the curve and was like,
Nice curve, bro.
I'm supposed to cast a 6-drop and then pay 2 extra mana? Like, what? And then I played it and was like, oh, this deck actually whips.
it
this
works.
deck works.
Yeah.
It uses the spawns, which I think is cool. It makes the mana that you need to make a 5-color, 6-color mana base work, and it's busted out of the box.
Yeah.
So I was. The reason I didn't go higher for this one is I settled on a B, although I settled on a B because none of the cards were relevant. They're just never leaving that. There's not a lot of direction that you can go with it because you can't really copy the Titans. Like it is what it is.
Yeah.
This is the deck. But it's cool and it's different, and I clearly resonated with a lot of people. So I settled on a B, which means our final rank for this one. You know what? I'm going to an A.
Hey!
I'll call it an A.
I'm not mad at that.
I'll call it
This
an
deck's
A.
cool, yeah.
It's
I like
cool.
the deck.
It's a cool deck.
Yeah.
And the reprint, I think the reprint value also was just like this deck isn't $100.
Yeah.
Like
No.
it shouldn't cost you $100.
That is a fair point.
But like the deck's really sweet. If you did get a hold of it and you didn't pay $100 for it, it's an A. All right, fine.
Hey,
It's an A.
have it.
All right.
Up next is Graveyard Overdrive with the face commander, my girl Disa the Restless. Ooh. Number 261 on EDH Rec, about average. This is a Jund deck, black, red, green, with self-mill and card types matter. It's like Goifi, because Disa herself makes Tarmogoyfs. The bang for your buck value on this one is $2.55, so below average, again, because these are expensive decks. The average price per reprint was $2.33, so the quality was like a hair above average, but not going to blow us away. Backup commander was Corum, the Undertaker, who was cool. He was like a Power Matters graveyard guy. Most valuable reprint was the Reaver Cleaver at $21 at time of printing. And the most played new card is 13,000 is fine, but it's Siege Gang Lieutenant. This is the one that makes 2 goblins at the beginning of combat if you control your commander. It makes a bunch of tokens. That's it. Those are they. Murph. You went first last time. Jordan.
Dang.
Back to me. I like this deck. I gave it a high B. I love Jund. I like that this was sort of like almost an homage to modern Jund with the
that's not
theme.
something we mentioned, but like the theme for this was Jund.
Yeah. It was like very much like Jund through the ages, because Jund means something to Magic players that this kind of did. I didn't feel this played super well out of the box because it didn't quite feel like it pulled off its Tarmogoyf theme quite fully enough. That being said, I've seen upgraded versions of this deck that just slap, that are just awesome. And I know a lot of the Goyfs have, made a big splash in other formats.
They sure have.
And things like
They're
that.
highly impactful cards, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this had some cool cards. It had some, neat reprints and stuff. Like, I really like the Reaver Cleaver. I think that's a fun card. So I gave this a high B.
Yeah. Murph?
I know we keep joking about, like, I'm going to rate this higher because of vibes, but legitimately, I gave this one an S because this is one of the most resonant commander decks I have ever seen.
Yeah.
Just like out of the box. And it just brings back so much nostalgia. There's so much like love and care put into a bunch of the different card designs. The fact that it just makes Tarmogoyfs is so cool. And you're right, Jordan. There is room for improvements in this deck, but it's not like it doesn't still play out of the box. Yeah. And so I think that's because the deck plays, and it plays just fine. In fact, I would go so far as to say it plays good, and just the resonance with it, this would be my first S.
Yeah.
Overall. Yeah.
I'm going to balance y'all out, and I picked an A for this one.
Fine.
I agree. I think it's fine out of the box, but I was obsessed when I saw this, and I was like,
we geeked out about this for a lot.
We talked so long about this. Like, all of the new Tarmogoyfs were really exciting. They like did upgraded versions of Jund classics. They did. There's a lot in it that was just focused on making sure this sort of honored the legacy of Jund. And in a way, all of the precons from Modern Horizons honored their own modern style of deck, right? There was Eldrazi's and Energy and Lens.
Yes. Types?
It's kind of Tron.
We'll get there.
It's Tron. All right.
Exactly Tron.
It's Tronish. It's Tron-y. It certainly plays Tron.
And
all right, and we'll get there in a second. But I just thought this one was the clearest and the coolest, and I had to build it. So I landed on A for Overdrive, which means overall. Do you have more?
No, I would just say this is kind of one where I think my initial thoughts on this were kind of an A, and then I just sort of like filled out our little like chart of the things, and it brought me down a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think A is entirely fair.
It's sick.
Love
A
it.
for vibes.
Love it.
S for vibes for Murph.
Yes.
Finally, tricky terrain. Tricky.
Tricky.
This.
It's tricky.
The face commander of this one was Omo, Queen of Vesuva, ranked 213 among commanders on EDH Rec, so pretty high. This is a blue-green lands deck. I know snooze, but this really wasn't about landfall. It had landfall stuff going on, but it was more than that. It was land types matter.
And technically creature types matter.
And
sorta.
technically creature types matter a little, I guess. The bang for your buck here was $3.22, which was above average and is really strong for a deck that was as expensive as it is. So that's a very high reprint value, actually. And the average price per reprint was $2.68. So well above average, high quality reprints there. That makes it is actually the best of the year. So you could get the highest quality reprints out of this box, which makes sense because it was expensive. The backup commander was Geode, Moog Ancient. Anybody remember a single thing about Geode?
Not a clue.
It was like lands.
Make land,
attack lands,
dryads,
creature lands.
when it entered the battlefield for each time you've cast your commander from the command zone this game. It's like a bad
Interesting.
food chain commander. The most valuable reprint was Apex Devastator.
Love this card. What a great card.
$28. The most played new card is a sweet one, Talon Gates of Madara
Also a
at
cool
36,550 decks on EDH Rec.
Can go in anything.
But also this had Horizon of Progress, Lazotep Quarry, and Planar Nexus. Just a mess of new 5-color lands in one box. Jordan went first. Murph, this is you.
Yeah, this deck is really good. I like this deck a lot. The Face Commander, I really like how it's kind of... It shows you two different things that it can do. As you were saying, Rachel, it does end up going more the lands route than the creature type thing. But I like that you can pull the commander out and build something based around that creature type ability if you want. And so it has a bunch of different ways that it can go. And I was a little bit iffy about that to begin with. I'm like, how good can this deck really be? And the answer is pretty good. This deck is like kills people.
Yeah.
So I give this deck an A. I just thought it was awesome.
Jordan?
I love this deck. I upgraded this one, and this is the only one of the Modern Horizons deck that I immediately went out and bought because I was like, yes, this is so cool. I felt like there were so many different ways to like upgrade it and go about it and that kind of thing. It's just, you know how like Morifon came out and it was like, great, we've got a tribal commander or a typal commander for all of the types that don't have a commander on it. Like, I feel like this is sort of that for the different land types because, you know, whenever they introduce like, okay, there's caves and things like that, you're going to get cool new pieces for this. And it's just awesome that as long as this game has been going and as many times as they've done like lands and landfall and Simic, they found like a cool new way to do it. The reprints are awesome. The cards in the deck were awesome. The value was great. It rocked out of the box. It's just so good. This was an S for me, dog.
Totally understandable.
This was an S for me as well. Out of the box, it was a little delicate, only because it couldn't really protect its commander, which sort of held it was the glue for how the deck works. But other than that, this deck's great. It's creative and it plays cool cards that we are excited to play. Like you got to play Locusts, and you were like, "What? I can."
Love
and it unlocks cool new cards. It's neat. It has two different ways to go. It's very upgradable. I've played against it a lot, a couple times out of the box and a couple times upgraded, and both of them are terrifying. And they just make 30 colorless mana, and you're like, okay, are we dead?
Yeah.
Did we die? And the answer is usually yes. So that makes this the first S of the year.
I'm fine running that one up to an S.
Tricky terrain.
What a great deck.
The holidays are upon us, so I, Jace the Mind Sculptor, have been brainstorming the best gifts, and I've zeroed in on some favorites. I'll even let you +2 and look at the top gift on my list. You won't want to put this one on bottom because it's RAYCON's Everyday Earbuds. Yes, their latest model is better than ever with multi-point connectivity to pair with 2 devices at once, a whopping 32-hour battery life, and a vibrant array of new colors including my obvious favorite, blue. And these earbuds even come with active noise cancellation, so all that chatter you don't want to hear gets bounced back to its owner's mouths. Features like that usually come at a mythically high cost, but RAYCON start at just half the price of other premium brands. Between their affordability, top-tier audio quality, and sleek, stylish design, I proclaim RAYCONs truly are the ultimate holiday gift. My ultimate is too hard to make a pun about. I tried, and I'm smart.
Save big for the holidays and get up to 25% off site-wide at buyraycon.com/command. That's right, you'll get up to 25% off everything on Raycon's website when you go to buyraycon.com/command. That's buyraycon.com/command.
This episode is sponsored by Etsy.
All right, and then I'm going to play Into the Floodmaw, and Rachel, I will gift you a tapped fish.
Thanks.
What?
I mean, it's fun.
It's a pretty impersonal gift, Josh.
What about Rachel says tapped fish to you?
I mean, it's the gift on the card.
Look, if you want to give personalized gifts to people that they'll actually like, you should try shopping on Etsy. It's easy to find original gifts on Etsy that'll make whoever you're shopping for this holiday season feel extra special.
So you'll get that big, excited reaction you're hoping for the moment they open their present.
The shops on Etsy have all sorts of fun, customizable items, so you can put together a truly thoughtful gift.
I got my mom a mug with little sculpted versions of her dogs on it. She loves it.
And I got my wife a beautiful vase with sculpted versions of Jordan's mom's dogs on it. She was confused.
We even used Etsy to find those Game Nights holiday blankets that everybody loved.
Oh yeah, I can do a ton of my holiday shopping on Etsy this year. But for now, bounce your ghostly prison, swing for lethal.
You got me.
For original gifts that say, I get you, Etsy has it. All right, my new deck list is complete. Now, let's see which cards I don't already own and buy them.
Wait, how'd you do that without going through a million boxes?
Oh, I just use ARCHIDEKT. They make it super easy to upload and manage your collection. Then when you're done brewing a deck, you can sort it by collection status to see what you already have.
So this group is just cards you don't own.
Yep, I just click buy this stack and it takes me right to Card Kingdom.
Whoa.
ARCHIDEKT is the best place to browse, brew, and playtest commander decks. Just go to archidekt.com/commandzone to get started.
That's ARCHIDEKT.com/commandzone.
Moving on to Bloomburrow and Animated Army with the face commander Bello, Bard of the Brambles.
Ooh.
This is the raccoon that turns big enchantments and artifacts into cars. It's
To cars?
into elementals. I just whenever something that isn't a creature becomes a creature, I picture it as a car.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, yep, fine.
It just turns them all into cars.
They're
got
cars.
This is the number 131 commander on EDH Rec, so quite high. People were excited about Bello. I've played against this deck quite a bit. It's red, it's green, its archetype is artifacts and enchantments, but specifically those that cost more than 4 mana. The bang for your buck was $3.28, well above the average, and the average price per reprint was $2.11, just above the average, so like pretty good quality for it. The backup commander was Wild Seer Scouring Maw. This is the one that gives enchantments cascade. Oh, good. Okay.
Pretty good in the hands of DrLupo on game nights.
The most valuable reprint here is Tendershoot Dryad at $16.
Oh yeah, Tendershoot
A
Dry.
little weird in the deck, but really good.
We'll
It
take it.
does defend your life total a lot. The most played new card is Thickest in the Thicket.
Amazing name.
The best name. 12,000 decks on EDH Rec. That's the one that makes your thing big and then gives you cards if you got the big. Jordan, talk about Bello.
I loved Bello. Bello was really good. Right out of the box, Bello just like was super fun. The artifacts or the enchantments and artifacts thing meant that it could play a lot of those like artifacts that are artifacts and enchantments that are sometimes like a little do nothing, but instead they would do something.
They walloped.
Very strong.
Yes.
Really just like kept a game going, kept games fast, cool. I think there's tons of ways to build it and cool stuff that you can do with it. Without, like, it is really strong, but I also think it has some kind of innate weaknesses, like about how, you know, your things can't kind of block for you and stuff, that makes it still feel like fair and fun and like you need to like build a little bit to like shore up that kind of thing. It also had, for its new card, one of the best Saproling cards in a long time.
Jordan has a Saproling deck.
I have a Saproling deck. I love Saprolings. I think it was like Brightcap Badger or something like that. And you know what? I appreciate it when that opportunity shows up for me. So I give this one an S.
Ooh.
Yeah. Wow. Murph, what do you think?
I mean, I liked it too. I echo basically everything that Jordan said, except for the Saproling thing. Don't really care about Saprolings, but I thought that the deck played well out of the box. I wish that there were a little bit more like artifacts or enchantments at 4 mana or above, specifically ones that made me go, oh, cool, that's neat. Like maybe something that would like discount so you could play it a little bit earlier. Just like one or two of those more in the deck I thought would have been cool. And it is also like very susceptible to removal. Like if Bellow dies, well, you're kind of screwed.
Looks like we're recasting Bellow.
Yeah, so I would put it at an A, perhaps a high A, but I don't think it quite reaches S territory for me.
Sure.
Reaches S territory for me. Bellow's great. I thought it was like mechanically really interesting. I thought the reprint value was there. I loved that it took do nothing enchantments and turned them into cars. I thought it was funny, which is cool and what you want out of a raccoon deck. I think the only disappointment I've ever seen expressed in this deck is that it doesn't care about raccoons.
Yeah.
And that's it.
But
it's super sick. It's so busted.
Every deck in Bloomburrow couldn't just be Typal.
It totally could, and it would have been fun, and everyone would have loved it. Just saying.
I'm just saying there's a reason that this is an A and not an S. If it cared about raccoons.
No, I do like this ability better than all your raccoons get +1/+1 or whatever.
Yeah. Bellow Sweet, I'm giving it an S, and that means that we're all giving it an S. Murph.
Okay, fine. I'll bump it up to an S.
All right.
I do like it. It's a good deck.
Up next is Family Matters with the face commander Zinnia, Valley's Voice. This is the bird that gives everything offspring. It is number 195 on EDH Rec, so quite above average as well. This is the third Jeskai deck, white, blue, and red. Its archetype was offspring, but also just little guys. Have a bunch of little boys. The bang for your buck here was $2.37, which is below average. And the average price per reprint was $1.40, also quite below average. The backup commander here is Arthur Marigold Knight, which has nothing to do with Zinnia.
Great.
Yeah, it attacks and puts a big thing into play and then returns it to hand. So you can cast it with Offspring. I guess they're both good with ETBs.
Sure.
Is the idea. The most valuable reprint here is Luminous Broodmoth at $14. And the most played new card is Polywog Prodigy.
That's a good one.
In almost 35,000 decks on EDH Rec.
Alrighty, dang.
Yeah, Murph, talk about this one for me.
I like this deck. It had the problem, not the problem per se, but I looked at it initially and was like, oh, this wants a lot of creatures with base power 1 in it. And so I was looking at the cards in the deck list. I'm like, well, this doesn't do that at all. And then I started reading a little bit more. I was like,
oh, right, yeah.
Oh, that's right. You're supposed to build around like the ETB offspring, and then that extra ability on top is gravy. So I thought that it was a little bit of a trap to put that ability first and the offspring part second. Because the deck is really built around that second ability, but it's really fun to get extra ETBs by making tokens. There's so much you can do with that token strategy. So yeah, I gave it an A. Liked it a lot.
I was also pretty high on this one. I did feel like it needed a bit of an upgrade to kind of work. The offspring theme felt like, I know they kind of put some offspring stuff into the deck and that kind of thing, but it was just sort of like a generic ETB doubler sort of thing.
And
so
that's
the
cool.
Theme, it is cool, but I feel like there's been things that have done a lot of stuff like that. So I was maybe a little lower on it than you were, but I still thought it was a fun deck. It's neat. I think Zinnia has a ton of cool ways you can build it and upgrade it that are all going to look different and cool, and I like that a lot. But yeah, I still gave it a B. I'd say a high B, but still a B.
Yeah, I was right between an A and a B on this one because I really liked it. It's very powerful. It does some cool stuff, and it's got really, really strong new cards in it. The Polywog Prodigy is obviously very powerful, but this also had Agate Instigator, which is the Impact Tremors Lizard, and Jacked Rabbit, which is
Jacked Rabbit is so
sick. So those two cards made me sort of look at this again, and it had an infinite combo in the deck. It wasn't great at pulling it off, but it did. And I looked at Zinnia and I was trying to figure out all the ways I could build it, and there were so many cool options there. So I liked it as a blink deck, and I liked it out of the box. It is a little bit clunky, and I think for that reason, it is not as good as the other ones out of the box. It could be a B, but vibes are an A for me.
Bloomburrow is really good on the vibes aspect.
The vibes are so good. Let's give this one an A.
Oh, and Zinnia gets points for the cool hat.
The cool hat.
Good hat.
A for the hat.
Yeah.
Zinnia sweet. Up next, you know her, you love her or hate her. It's Peace Offering with Ms. Bumbleflower.
Miss Bumbleflower.
She's number 124 ranked commander on EDH Rec, and she's a group hug commander.
Question mark?
This is a white, a blue, and a green deck, so Bant. Its archetype was +1/+1 counters and group hug and card draw in general. It's heavier on the card draw and the group hug than the counters, but it had that also. The bang for your buck here is $2.73, so bang on average. And the average price per reprint was $1.66, which made it a little bit low. So a hair lower on the reprint value in this deck.
A hair lower.
Get this guy out of here.
You said it, Rachel, not me.
The backup commander was Mr. Foxglove, who is a sort of a card draw matters guy. The most valuable reprint was Colonian Hydra at $15. I know you're looking at, you're like, what? in Ms. Bumbleflower? And you're like, I guess. The most played new card is 20-Toed Toad.
Which I love.
At 16,500 decks on EDH Rec-ish. Murph, do you want to go first or last on this one?
Fine, I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay. So, all right, here we go up on the platform.
Yep.
I hate Miss Bumbleflower. I do not like the design of this card because it is every time you cast a spell. It doesn't matter what type of spell, any spell. It has multiple things that you have to do every time you cast a spell, and there are decision points that to be made. So this deck is the worst. Somehow this deck is worse than the Storm deck at eating up the chess clock. Sure. It's difficult to track because you're like, oh, I put a counter on this turn, and it has flying, and you're like, oh, really? Because sometimes turns in Commander can just be long. I understand why the abilities are on there like it is, because it wants to try to give a little bit of punching power to a group hug type commander. It wants to make sure that, well, some things can grow and then eventually you can fly over your opponents while they're all doing their thing, while you're giving them cards and you're fueling them. And while I understand that from a theoretical standpoint, I just don't like how this deck plays like at all. Mm-hmm. It makes it so that you're like, well, I'm just going to sit here and I feel like I don't matter because the Miss Bumbleflower player has so much agency. Mm-hmm. Like, I think they overcorrected with the amount of agency that this deck has. And for that reason, I'm out. I don't like this deck. There are cool cards in here, so I didn't give this deck a full-on F. I gave it a D. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I just think this deck fundamentally fails with its face commander, and then everything else is fine. Not amazing, but fine.
Sure. Jordan?
I want you to look Miss Bumbleflower in the face.
Yeah.
Oh, I will do
it.
And
look
give
at that
her
rabbit.
You
that
stink.
grade.
Whoa, S for stink.
How
S
can you do that?
No, I said D, not S.
He gave her an S for stink. I'm much higher on this deck than Murph is.
You did not have to edit the game nights with Miss Bumbleflower in it. That's definitely helped add to my hatred for this deck.
I think that might have something to do with Josh's build.
100%. But that's like one of the ways that you should probably take the deck.
Sure.
Like,
but
if you're trying to upgrade it.
Unupgraded, I think this deck played really well out of the box. Like, Bumbleflower makes, especially if you haven't made it broken, like a fun kind of play experience for everybody. Like, it does the group hug thing that you kind of like. I thought that 20-Toed Toad was a cool card. It had decent reprints and stuff like that.
Tempt with bunnies in it.
And
you can give it Tempt with bunnies.
They don't they've put out a couple precons with like group hug type feelings, like Kaneos and Tiro. Maybe I'm saying the names wrong, but you know what I mean. But this is the first one that I feel like is really kind of like nailing the group hug thing, and I just love that in the 4 bunnies. I think it really fits. It felt with right with the theme of Bloomburrow. I had this sort of on the same level or maybe a little higher as the Offspring deck, so I gave this a B.
Tisk tisk.
I gave it S for stinky.
Oh my gosh. All right, Rachel, we have some beef. You tell me why you like this deck so much that you gave it an S.
There's a few things that I really like about this deck. I think it's super funny. I think it's a very exciting commander to figure out. They don't build a lot of commanders with downsides, and I was excited to see them do something like this and like flubs that give you these little things that you have to work around or take advantage of, or give your opponents something, but know that you're benefiting more from it. That's a tricky thing that they don't mess with that much. So I was excited that they tried a difficult archetype like Group Hug, and I was excited that they tried a commander with downside, and I was sort of weirded out by the +1/+1 counter stuff going on. That was a little strange.
Yeah, they're just trying to give it punching power.
Yeah.
But like, it had what I want out of a political commander is that it doesn't like it doesn't say it quite on its face. And I think that they get pretty close to doing what like a modern day Feldergriff looks like. Is you're giving out value, but you're getting value in return. And because of that, it has like, it's cute and it's fun. And it has that same thing where you want to give something away, but also know that you're benefiting from it.
Does it have
in
to be
return.
every single time you take a game
No,
action?
it doesn't, but it does.
That's just so rough. I also do think
it's
that
very powerful.
I think that this deck is very much a trap for new players as well.
Oh,
because,
it's not a new
my
player
gosh,
deck.
it's a cute bunny.
Yep.
Do not get this if you're a new player.
No,
I mean,
that's right.
I would say don't get it just in general because I don't like it very much.
Yeah.
But I think even Rachel and Jordan would agree that as a new player, do not buy this because your play patterns are just so dang complicated. You can feel smart for figuring things out with it, to Rachel's point, but yeah.
Sometimes a trial by fire is what really gets you into Magic, though. So.
A trial by bunnies. S might be a little strong for this one, but I'm sticking to my guns because these two balance me out. We'll land at a reasonable B for Peace Offering.
Love
I still
it.
think that's too high, but teach their own.
Finally, we've got Squirreled Away. This is the face commander is Hazel of the Root Bloom, the squirrel. It's a number 305, ranked commander on EDH Rec. This is a green and black Squirrelsy tokensy sacrifice deck. Its bang for your buck was quite high, $3.87, well above average.
Not
and
bad.
the average price per reprint was $2.45, also quite above average. Backup commander was the Odd Acorn Gang. Group
Love
of
them.
squirrels that give your squirrels abilities.
I like to imagine their names are Menace, Reach, and Trample.
Yeah. Tag yourself. This card's sweet. And the most valuable reprint here was Belladros Witherbloom at $17. And the most played new card is Swarmyard Massacre in 16,000 decks. This is the one that makes two squirrels and then gives everything -1/-1 for all the like squirrels and insects and little gremlins you got. So that is Hazel. It's about like tokens and copying tokens and also a little bit squirrels, but for the general population, not enough about squirrels. Jordan, what did you think about this one?
Boy, I just like this one. You know, it was like, I think we had to have a squirrels deck in Bloomburrow, and squirrels has been sort of a popular niche type for a long time. And I think the reprints were really good, like Belladros Witherbloom, and I think it also had Toski and like a couple other pretty, like Chatterfang I think was in there too.
Yeah.
And I think this deck played really strong out of the box because it was pretty simple, you know?
Yeah.
You just like, you make tokens, you do squirrels, stuff like that.
Squirrels are good. They just are.
Yeah, it's got some cool new cards in it. I can't remember. There's one that's like Hazel's something.
Brewmaster.
Brewmaster, yeah.
think.
Hazel's Brewmaster, which I think has opened up a bunch of cool new lines of play, like giving food abilities of things in Graveyard.
Goes
I just,
infinite with Devoted Druid.
It does, which I think is sick. I just thought that this deck kind of hit on all the levels it was supposed to, and it was a good value, and it played well, and I liked the theme, and I gave it an A.
Yeah. Murph?
I like it a lot too. I wish that it had more to do with the squirrel thing. I do like the way that they went with like, oh, you make squirrel tokens and you make food tokens because squirrels and food, squirrels and acorns, haha, get it. Like I do like that aspect of it, but I do wish it leaned a little bit heavier into the squirrel aspect of things. So for that, I give it a B, but I basically agree with most of the things that Jordan said.
Yeah, I settled on A for this one. The reprints are great, plays really well out of the box. I think the face commander is very powerful. But I agree. It sort of had this thing where it's like, yeah, it's another green black tokens commander.
It felt more like a tokens commander instead of a squirrel
incidentally
commander.
cares about squirrels. Yeah. And that was disappointing to a lot of people, but I think it just checked enough boxes elsewhere and it had the odd acorn gang to kind of like pull up the squirrel floor there.
Love them, very cool.
That I think I'm still landed on an A for Squirreled Away. It doesn't like blow my mind, but I mostly chalk that up to it being not in my bag.
Yeah.
A for scrolled away. Finally, Duskmourn.
Ooh, the
I
most
missed.
recent.
We're going to start with Death Toll. Does anybody know the name of the face commander of Death Toll?
Winter.
Yeah. We made you do research for this.
Winter is coming.
Winter, cynical opportunist.
I couldn't tell you the full name, that's for sure.
Well, I remember
is
the name
Black-
Winter because everyone in Duskmourn is named around things that they remember from before the house.
Oh, he remembered Winter.
So they're like, winter, it's a thing that used to happen.
Oh.
Anyway,
Thanks, Lord.
I did not know that. Now I have to look at all the names again. So this was the worst. This is the lowest ranked commander on EDH Rec at 816. Is the least built of the year. We have to chalk some of that up to it being a relatively new commander, so it had less time on shelves for people to build and put online. But it is still worse than Koust, which blows my mind because he's not like super bad. This is like a green-black delirium deck that cared about multiple types and like having permanents of different types and some self-mill and some graveyard stuff. The bang for your buck here was $2.89, just a hair above average. The average price per reprint was $1.76, a hair below average. Backup commander here is really the one that people remember. It's Rendmaw Creaking Nest.
awesome.
This is the one that makes all the crows and goads them. So it puts all of your opponents into a big crow fight. The most valuable reprint here was Professor Onyx at $13, pretty low. And the most played new card with the asterisk that this is a new deck and hasn't been put in as many decks because it is new, is only in 5,700 decks on EDH Rec. It's Into the Pit. That's so you can play stuff off the top of your library by sacrificing non-land permanents in addition to paying their mana cost. So you can cast stuff off of your library, but you just have to sack other stuff to do it. That is this deck. I don't remember much from it, if I'm honest. The Delirium was sort of like low impact, and the stuff in the 99 was just kind of fine. But what do you guys think? Murph, go ahead.
Yeah, I do think it functioned, barely,
Yeah.
but I think Delirium is just not as exciting of a graveyard mechanic as most. It works fine as a draft or sealed mechanic,
Yeah.
right? But as far as trying to do that in a commander game, I got 4 types. Great. I'd much rather have something like Disa where you're making Tarmogoyfs and you're counting those types and you're like, I'm going to get some awesome out of this. Whereas the payoff for Winter is good, but
You
it's
only need to get to 4.
yeah, you only need to get to 4, and then you're just like, okay, woohoo, I got there. There's just not a ton of excitement for it, but the deck does play, and it plays okay, so I gave it a C.
All right. Jordan?
I feel like there are decks that do the thing Winter is doing much better than Winter does, and there's nothing so interesting about how you have to build Winter to make it. And I completely agree. It's like what I said earlier, where I feel like a lot of times now that they connect the commander decks with every set that comes out, there'll be there'll be a mechanic that just distinctly doesn't feel like a commander mechanic, and they'll jam a commander deck into it just so they can use the set relevant mechanics and things. And this feels like the one for this one. Rinmaw feels so much cooler. I gave this a D. I just didn't think this hit on any level, really.
It's fair.
The final ranking for Death Toll is a D.
Womp womp.
It's underwhelming. It's completely forgettable. I think if they had focused on the multiple card type thing and just put Renma as the face commander and done a little bit more political goad stuff, that's a much more interesting precon that we'd be talking about. But Winter as a face commander is just not doing the thing. Up next, Endless Punishment. With the commander Valgavoth, Harrower of Souls, the very busted flying creature that draws cards whenever your opponents lose life. It is ranked 153 on EDH Rec, so quite high. It is a red and black. It's a group slug deck. It's all about dealing damage and having everybody lose life at the same time. The bang for your buck value here was $3.76, very high. The average price per reprint was $2.35, above average, good. Backup commander here is the Lord of Pain.
The Lord of Pain.
We're a huge fan of the Lord of Pain
We've
over
just
here.
used him for a lot of things.
We just keep putting the Lord of Pain in our stuff, and I think it says a lot about how funny he is and how cool and interesting this card is that we just keep coming back to the Lord of Pain. The most valuable reprint in the deck was $18 with Witch's Clinic, and the most played new card is the Lord of Pain. 9,000 decks on EDH Rec. What do you think about this one, Murph?
Yeah, I think this deck is great. I think the thing that this deck does the best is its face commander and its backup commander. Like the two commanders are both so cool, both so good, and they both like do the thing that they want to do, which is throw a bunch of damage around. And you do get paid off for that, at least with Valgavoth. And it's a fun time. Like this deck is really fun to play. And so I gave this deck an S because I just think it's neat. That's it.
S for vibes. Jordan?
I upgraded this deck because I have an Obnixilis Captive Kingpin deck, and I was like, oh, it's going to be kind of similar. And I was right. They're both like, I've played this, and it's very strong. It comes out of the gate, and it's just awesome. It does the thing. Like, it's drawing you cards. It's hard to get rid of. It's a powerful commander. All the cards in the deck are neat. I feel like a bunch of the cards, even the ones that aren't like the most valuable new cards, are still ones I like playing. I love the Sadistic Shell Game card that was in it and stuff. I think there's a ton of ways to upgrade it, and it makes fun, cool, high-pressure games that tend to be like fast and memorable, and every decision feels like it matters because life totals get low.
It makes stuff happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I love it. I love the way it plays. I love the way they did it. Group Slug is an awesome archetype for them to like pull out and things. I gave it an S2.
Me too.
Hey!
Whoa, is this our first agreement on an S?
S. Yeah.
deck.
Out of the box, this thing is cracked. This doesn't have the Miss Bumbleflower problem of you look at the box and you think it's for new kids, and you look at it and you're like, it's a demon, and it looks like it's gonna really hurt me, and it does. And that's
exactly
what the box does, and that's what the 99 does, and that's what the backup commander does, and they're all great at it. It's one of those things that you could open and sleeve up and have it the same way forever. I think this deck, it's hard to argue that it is the best of the year, among the best. Up next, Jump Scare with the face commander Zimone Mysterious Unraveler. She's ranked 395 among commanders on EDH Rec. She's green, she's blue. Her deck was about landfall and manifest dread, so she played lands and manifested cards and then could flip them up when lands entered the battlefield. Sure. The bang for your buck here is $3.17, above average, not a ton. The average price per reprint was $2.04, right on average. Backup commander was Kian Corrupted Memory. This is the, like, when you draw cards, you put counters, and then when it's even, you can flash this kind of stuff in, and when it's odd, you can flash this kind of stuff in. This doesn't have a whole lot to do with landfall, but she's neat. This shares the title for the most valuable reprint of the year with AEC Tyrant of Gyre straight reprint, currently sitting at $35 when this card was reprinted. And the most played new card in the deck is Giggling Skitterspike. Almost 9,000 decks on EDH Rec. This is the toy that does kind of a stuffy doll type thing. Okay. Jordan, what did you think about this one?
Yeah, this one was okay. I think that this like plays pretty fine out of the box. I wasn't like blown away by the themes. Like Manifest Dread is a little, it's got the same problem that it's not a super supported mechanic. I mean, it just kind of works on its own, so it's okay. But Landfall, they didn't really do anything crazy and different with it this time, so I don't know. It didn't really super work together for me. It still played pretty well. The reprints were great. The new cards are like terrible. I don't feel like there's any of the new cards that like mattered. Like, it's just nothing in there.
Not the one they come from the pipes or whatever it was?
The one that cares about ETB and manifest 2 cards?
That's the point of the deck.
Yeah, but it's in terms of long-term relevance.
No, I'm never going to play it in anything.
It's cool.
He said there's no cool cards in there. I was like, oh, actually.
Yeah.
It's cool-ish.
Yeah.
I don't think cards I'm never going to play are all that cool, honestly.
Fine.
IEC is a cool reprint. But yeah, I think I gave it a B.
Yeah. Murph?
Yeah, I don't know if you couldn't tell from my interjection, but I do like this deck better than Jordan. It's definitely not an S because the deck is like reasonably clunky, but I think this deck lives and dies by its face commander. Because it has that landfall ability, it's like, well, the deck just kind of does its thing without you needing to have other stuff in the deck. Like, you need to play lands. You need to have stuff that maybe gets you some more lands, and the deck does have that. And aside from that, it's just a question of like, well, what are you going to be like cheating in with your Manifest Dread or whatever?
Yeah.
Right? And so you just want to try to make sure that you can at some point get that second land. And the deck out of the box isn't amazing at that. It does have some things to do with it, but it's not great at it. So I think this commander is super neat. This is one of my favorite commanders from the year. And so because of that, I gave this an A.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I settled at a B for this one, but I liked the face commander a lot. I think it was a different way to use landfall because it's about timing. Like when your lands enter and when you flip your creatures up is very different than just dump, get value. Whereas if you can like use a Harrow or something to flash lands in on instant speed, you could flip up a creature and block with it. And it had some like cool tricks like that I really thought the commander was neat, and the deck was all right at doing that. The thing that was most disappointing to me about it was the coolest thing about the deck is the timing thing, and it didn't do a good job of like giving you a lot of control over the timing.
Yeah, but we did the upgrade. I think that was what we added the most of.
It was mostly fetch lands and like instant speed land stuff. And like it doesn't really matter what you're cheating up. It was really frustrating to me because there was a giant Adaphage in the green and black deck when I think giant Adaphage is the perfect card to cheat into play with Zimone because you can flip it up after it's unblocked and it's about to deal combat damage. And then there was a card in this deck that you flip up that I was like, put that in the other one.
They could have just done a little flip-flop.
And it would have, like the synergy would have been much, much better. So I feel like they just didn't take the jump scare thing into account quite as much as I would have wanted to. Because there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with like a hornet's nest or like that kind of stuff.
So cool.
Is really fun and silly. And I just didn't think the deck quite sold the commander well enough for me. So I gave this one a B, but I had a lot of hope for it. So I think this is B trending towards A.
Yeah, it doesn't take a ton to make it like really fun.
Yeah. B overall for jump scare. One more commander of the year. This is Miracle Worker. This is the Aminatu deck. Aminatu Veil Piercer, of course. 328 on EDH Rec, so a little bit below average in terms of people getting excited and building Aminatu. This is white, blue, and black. It's Miracles and Enchantress. So your commander gave big enchantments Miracle, so you could cast them for cheaper, and it had like a little bit of top of library manipulation stuff to go with a few of the Miracles cards as well. Bang for your buck here is $3.46. This is pretty solid, like quite above average in terms of total reprint value. The price per reprint is $2.08, which is on average. The backup commander is the Master of Keys, who I think is pretty neat. This gives enchantment cards in your graveyard escape. So it's like a self-mill enchantment deck in Esper, which is cool. The most valuable reprint here is Extravagant Replication at $16. This is a 6 mana enchantment that like copies stuff, so it's a good thing to miracle out. Gives you incidental value.
It's kind of fun.
The most played new card is Fear of Sleep Paralysis. It's an almost 10,000 decks on EDH Rec. This is a huge enchantment creature that like stuns. Yeah, it stuns your opponent's stuff.
Pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Pretty good, actually.
Murph, what did you think about this one?
Yeah, this one is really weird.
It is.
Like looking at it, you're like, all right, what do I do with this? And there are like some great enchantments in here, and the deck plays pretty fine out of the box, but it just definitely takes a while to get your head wrapped around like what this deck is trying to do. Overall, I gave it a B because I felt like they could have included a little bit more like cool, fun stuff and maybe made it a little bit more easy to play. Because it is certainly not the greatest. At the very least, you have some top deck manipulation with the commander, but
not much.
Not much.
Jordan?
I was a little lower. I gave this deck a C. I just don't think it really works out of the box. Like,
I literally said it works out of the box.
Okay, but I kind of don't think it does. Like,
interesting.
It's got these kind of expensive enchantments going on that's like, oh, this would be great if you miracle it, but you don't miracle it all that often. You know, like you can't always be drawing a enchantment for your first land of the turn. I know, so I work with Jamie Block on a lot of things, and I think he upgraded this one.
Yeah, he did.
And when he was going through it, like we talked through it, and it just seemed like frustrating to try and make it work. Like I know he tried to set it so you were drawing cards on everyone's turn, so you could be miracling more out,
or at least getting a shot to miracle.
Yeah.
But unless you are like doing that pretty consistently, I just don't think you get that much value out of a Zimone. I mean, not Zimone.
Aminatu.
Aminatu. And I'm just not that interested in enchantments. Like, I feel like enchantments as a archetype has just been done to death in precons. Obviously not a ton this year, but I don't know. I feel like this deck's pulled in a lot of different ways, and it sounds kind of cool, but in practice, Miracle's a bit of a frustrating mechanic to deal with.
It is difficult, yeah.
I just don't think it's that great, and it's not that big of a payoff for something that just doesn't line up all that often. So, yeah, that was a C for me, dog.
I landed on a B for this one. I think I'm more interested in it. I think Esper enchantments is cool and not something that we've seen before. Also focusing on getting big enchantments into play is strong. The thing that was frustrating for me is like there just aren't that many enchantments that you get into play in these colors that win you the game on the spot. There's a lot that are like, great, now I have a thing that says I draw 4 cards, but like I don't want to draw any of these cards. I want to do something. And so like that was frustrating about it. But yeah, like it's the deck is dying for an omniscience, and you're like, what is that really? Is it just a fancy way to get omniscience into play?
Yeah.
But it had some like neat stuff going on. It also had one of my favorite new cards in a commander product in the year, which was Metamorphosis Fanatic, I believe. It's the black miracle creature that when you reveal it, it enters and reanimates a creature.
Oh yes, that
with
is
a
actually
lifelink counter in it. It's busted. It's really cool. I can't believe it's not the most played new card, if I'm honest, because I think it's cracked. But so I think the deck had more going for it than it didn't, and it was memorable. Which I like a lot. I agree it was definitely clunky out of the box and needed some upgrades to like get it to a place where you were stoked and it felt consistent. But it was definitely had some big ideas and was trying some neat things. Plus, Aminatu, she's back. I like her.
I like Aminatu.
So B overall for Miracle Worker. All right.
That's a lot of precons.
That's 24 precons.
Boy, they make a lot of precons.
Oh my gosh. Are we okay? Is everyone
there were
here?
Like 4 or 5 precons a year. We're here.
Everybody breathe. Okay. Now that we've walked through all of them individually, how do we think that Wizards did on average this year? Like, how do you think Wizards did with the 2024 precons in general? You can talk about design or complexity if you thought they were more fun. It's up to you.
I think pretty good. I think the only like really dull spot for me was perhaps the Fallout decks. And even so, there were still like some cool things in there. And so it wasn't like I'm writing this completely off and saying, oh, this was a complete failure. So I think that's the year prior, 2023, there were some sets where we're like, yeah, this overall set really stinks.
Yeah.
But I don't think we had any of that in 2024 at all. So I think they've done a much better job with that. And a lot of the designs I think are cool. Like the new cards, they're doing a great job making the new cards. And yeah, I don't know. They are just fun. They are trying these new different archetypes.
Yeah.
And even if they miss, like I am glad that they're trying.
Me too.
So even if I don't like Miss Bumblethrower that much, I would much rather you try something and fail at it and say, all right, here's what we learned from that. We're going to try this again. And in fact, it sounds like you think they didn't even fail at all. But yeah, even so, like, I just think that that's way better. So I think they're doing better than they ever have before with precons.
I agree. I think the average this year was a lot higher than last year. We had no Fs this year. Just nothing that we settled on an F. I don't even think we gave one an F.
We didn't, no.
I think we were just Ds was as low as we went because everything was like fine. Like you could probably make it work, even the ones that we just didn't really love. So it felt like the floor was a lot higher with the precons this year, which was great. I also love that they were trying a new thing. They were doing a lot of new art in precons this year, especially Duskmourn and Bloomburrow had new Sol Ring art, new Command Tower art. There was a new exotic orchard, which is so cool and such a great payoff for buying a precon is getting the stuff that feels appropriate for the world. I thought that was a great improvement this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was generally a decently high quality like group of decks. Pretty much you could buy any deck and there's some reason to have it, you know, whether it was a sick reprint in it or because it played really well out of the thing. And again, I do love exactly what you said, that they're trying new things, that they are bringing archetypes that might already exist but haven't had a deck built around them like to the forefront. The only deck that I think could have deserved an F is the Deadly Disguise deck from Murders at Karlov Manor.
That's got Jessica's Will.
And Jessica's Will.
You can't do it to
saved
that
from
deck, yeah.
Yeah.
But if it hadn't had Jessica's Will, I would have slammed an F on that one.
Yeah.
At least for me.
I do think most of the decks did have at least one, or not most of the decks, most of the sets did have at least one dud deck, which I didn't love. There weren't many that were like, every single deck I think is like really good. Or like
I think Bloomburrow got every deck was good.
Yeah.
And OTJ was kind of like everything is average.
Well, once again, I will disagree on the Bloomburrow one, but
The one thing we haven't mentioned that we've expressed frustration in this episode is there was a lot of repeat stuff. There was 2 Jeskai Energy decks. There was 2 face down like Manifest decks. There was also 2 Simic Landfall decks. And they were doing sort of different things with them.
Yeah.
But it is a shame that we're like repeating these archetypes so much when, we do have 24 decks.
I think part of it is from the thing I keep kind of talking about, because decks are so tied to the sets that are coming out with them in a lot of cases, although Fallout kind of repeated something and wasn't necessarily in that. But, they tend to make sets coming out with similar things so that they can all build together into a standard Pioneer and stuff like that format kind of thing.
Yeah.
And sometimes that leads to the themes in the Commander decks being sort of the same across the year.
Yeah. So. Having Manifest Dread and Disguise in the same standard just means that we're going to get a lot of face down stuff, and whether we like it or not.
Yep.
All right. So what was the best set of precons of the year for you, Jordan?
I think it was probably Bloomburrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say Modern Horizons 3 because obviously I wasn't as down on the energy deck as you guys were, and it had my absolute favorite deck of the year, which was the Disa deck in there. Like everything in that, even if you say the energy deck is not very good, the rest of the decks are just top notch.
I would say I would agree with Modern Horizons 3 if we were just getting all those decks for free. But the price that Modern Horizons 3...
For the regular price, for like $40.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We'll take any deck for free.
If price was taken off the table, Modern Horizons 3 would be my favorite set of the year. But I think they overpriced it and they didn't really live up quite enough to how much more expensive and hard to get they were.
Yeah, I just thought it was the most consistently good, but I think Bloomburrow is also an excellent choice.
Yeah, I think if we're just talking about like... that's the biggest downside for Modern Horizons 3, obviously, is the price thing. They were hard to get. They were like, even especially the fancy ones that everybody was after, that were really impossible to get. I think I will go with Bloomburrow for my favorite as well, but Modern Horizons 3 is a great option. I think Bloomburrow I liked the most just because the vibe was so clear. They knew exactly what they were doing with those decks, and it like you knew exactly what the world was. And so they really played like a cool, interesting set, which I was like in a set of precons. Worst set of precons for the year. Strong opinions?
Probably Fallout.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah,
I don't think MKM was bad enough. Like there were like some really good decks in there that I don't think I can rag on that one too much.
I think it's either Thunder Junction or Fallout for me.
Well, Thunder Junction I think had plenty of like at the very least decent stuff. Like there wasn't a ton that inspired me as much. I did like the Theft one, but
yeah, and I just feel like Thunder Junction had a couple more misses and left a little less of a like strong. Like, it didn't leave much of an impression on me.
That's totally fair, because that was the one that I was like, this is my blind spot for these decks, because clearly, like, I just kind of glossed over them during spoiler season.
And I almost feel like I can't necessarily say Fallout because Fallout feels like such a different beast. Like, it wasn't necessarily there to be the you buy a precon and play the precon experience that you feel like most of the others are. It was there to show off the Fallout universe and introduce new cards and characters, so... Maybe Thunder Junction, but
I'll still stick with Fallout.
Yeah, it's fair.
I'm Thunder Junction on this one, mostly because I can name 2 of them, and I've already forgotten the other 2.
Yeah.
Which ones I've forgotten?
Felix 5. No, wait, that was a backup.
No, I remember Deserts, and that's like the only one that ever jumps to mind. And then I'm like, oh yeah, Stella Lee, and then the other 2 couldn't for the life of you named the Olivia deck. I probably would have gotten to Gonti in a second.
Gonti
but
steals
like,
things.
the Olivia deck is so boring and it just doesn't have a strong opinion. And I think the follow decks at the very least have an opinion and have like some cool cards in them that make you interested and force you to like reckon with them going forward.
Yep.
A lot of the cards that were in Thunder Junction can just be lost to time. Where it's like, are you playing a theft deck? Then you can maybe look at those. But you're not? Oh, then they're terrible. Don't. It's just, I think long-term Thunder Junction decks will be lost to time.
Yeah. Thunder Junction decks, like 10 years from now, you'll go to a convention and they'll be at the same price on the shelf at a thing. And you'll go, whoa, those are old. They haven't gone up in value? They'll be like, nope.
Nope. Because nobody wants Olivia the Treasure one.
Womp womp. Olivia the Treasure one. New name.
To the listeners, what was your favorite precon this year? Which one missed the mark for you? Hopefully we didn't rag on your favorite precon, but if we did, tell us why we're wrong in the comments.
We'll come fight you.
We will.
Or maybe we'll agree. Maybe you'll talk us into it.
We'll sell Murph to come fight you. We'll send Murph
What,
to
you're
come
only
fight
disagreeing
you.
with me? Come on, you can disagree with these two as well.
No. You're the chosen fighter.
Oh, no.
If you want to pick up any of these cards that we talked about, we talked a lot about face commanders and backup commanders and old cards that you're like, I never bought my Unexplained Absence because I definitely wasn't buying the Cows Precon. Go to cardkingdom.com and they've got all the singles and sealed product that you can ever want. There's a lot of hidden gems in precons. I feel like those are the cards that kind of get lost and somebody plays across the table from you and you're like, what is that?
What the?
So go back and look through those, see if there's anything that you need to pick up, and you can get a ton of them in the same place from cardkingdom.com/command. They've got a huge selection of cards. So if you're looking for a specific reprint or you're looking for a specific version, if you're like, I want the necromancy with the eroded text, you can get that on cardkingdom.com/command, and you can do so while supporting the show.
And you can also get cool stuff if you use ULTRAPRO products. They got sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, anything you could ever want or need, anything that a loved one could ever want or need. Yeah. They're a great gift idea because you don't always know what card your friend, family member wants. But, they can always use more sleeves. They can always use another playmat. That is evergreen. Get them an ULTRAPRO one. It will definitely last. Has awesome art on it. And if you use the affiliate link, ultrapro.com/command, they got fire sales on there all the time. Sign up for the newsletter and you'll be notified whenever cool sales go on. And yeah,
check out those Mana 8 sleeves. Those are
Mana 8, very cool.
So slick and so sharp. And when you're building monocolored a lot like me, it's cool when you have a sleeve that just yells the identity of your deck.
If only there were monocolored commander decks from this year to go with the Mana 8 products.
ultrapro.com/command. Before we go, we want to say thank you to our amazing team here at the Command Zone. Thank you to Rachel Kendra, Karina Cruz, Sebastian Salazar, Grav Galati, Jamie Block, Jake Boss, Eric Lem, Manson Lung, Christopher Matista, Evan Limburger, Sam Waldo, Josh Likwai, Jimmy Wong, and of course, special thanks to the two people who joined me for this very long episode, Jordan Pridgen and Josh Murphy.
That's us.
Thanks for watching,
Thanks
everybody.
for having us.
Hope you had fun.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
I love talking about
2024 was
these.
a good year.
Yeah.
All right.
Except for other reasons.
Bye.
Thank you for your attention. For further inquiries, send an email to commandcast@rocketjump.com or ask us on Twitter @JFWong and @JoshLeeQuai. See you later, alligator.
Greetings, humans.